We'll start here in a few minutes. Let me put on the starting suit somewhere that doesn't suck. I add 6 to the finished pile. Right. Alright, folks. I don't know how many people actually care about seeing a tier list to Armored Core. I'll get started in a minute or two, but I would not say this is a popular series. The discussion in general as we've played it's been okay. There hasn't been a whole lot of people rolling in that weren't already here. Few new people who seen the series before, but yeah, perhaps for good reason. We'll see. But maybe in the East it's a bit more popular. And it obviously kept the lights on, I'm sure, in FromSoft Studios. But it's an important series, and I think it does. I guess we're already kind of getting into it, sort of a little pre-discussion. But, I do think it carves something unique out. I think that regardless of the overall series quality, I do think it is a important series or a unique series that has a good reason to have fans. It isn't undeserved or something to have what fans it does have. Mecha in general, I don't think is as popular in the West. So maybe it's way more popular in the East. I just don't know. But yeah, not the spiciest when it comes to popularity there. Does not mean it's bad necessarily. We'll see the final say on the series, I guess, at the end, but I'm sure I'll mention the overall thoughts as we go. But yeah, it does mean that just for this video, we'll see how much discussion there is. It might just be me talking a lot. Even if you're not an Armored Core series playthrough person, or you didn't play any of these, or you only played one, feel free to talk about any of these. Doesn't even have, you can just, I mean, if you're sort of like curious what the game's like, or the story, this will be full spoilers, full everything. Just discussing the series, we can go down any tangents people want. How it's gonna work, how it usually does with these. I'm just going to put like a tentative placement for most games. Explain why. And then as we put the other games on there, I'll start adjusting. I don't really do like A, B, C, D, E, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I could. It essentially ends up kind of being like that. If you want to put like a label on it, you can. I think those labels are less important than the conversation, but this is still a fun thought exercise just to compare them and see why I think this, and if I can form an opinion on whether it is that way or not. Doesn't mean it's like fact, doesn't mean I'm even right. I might not even agree with it in a week, who knows, but after thinking about it more. But probably take a little bit. Usually takes a couple hours. This series, it might not take that long. Let's see, there's not as much to say, maybe. It's a lot of nuance through all these. Might make it harder. But, yeah. So it's all about relative, how much I liked one over the other, or objectively, subjectively. I try to be, I mean, you can't really be full objective in this kind of thing, but try to lean on that a little bit, or at least explain why I might think the objective or whatever is more important in some cases. Good. Always on these, man. We got the music going too. Sorry it's not Armored Core music. There's probably some chill Armored Core music. I don't have any on tap right now. I was just picking some kind of ambient stuff from a game I liked. It's got space in it. Good enough. Maybe it's not fun music, but not supposed to be really like fun. If anything, it's supposed to barely be there. Right, I guess we can get started in like 5 minutes. Anywho, I planned on going in the order I played them. I arranged them in the order I played them, which is release order. It should have everything. We got one right here, Project Phantasma, Master Arena, Armored Core 2, Another Age. Pre-rate that one. 3, Silent Line. I don't know these by the covers as well. I had to kind of double check some of these last. This is a Nexus. Ninebreaker, Formula Front. I played the PSP version, and I'm not including the PSP versions of all of these games. There's a PSP version of all the 3 series, pretty much. I mean, yeah, they're a little different, but they're pretty much the same. Did not do a playthrough of those. Last Raven, 4, For Answer, 5, and Verdict Day, and 6. Yeah, I guess we'll get going. So, we already kind of pre-talked about it, but Armored Core, I guess if you don't know the series, is a mecha building action series. It's got some PvP elements, multiplayer elements in some of the games, but it's mostly focused on taking on short, tight missions, gaining currency to upgrade your mech in a post-apocalyptic or dystopian world, generally ruled by corporations, where you just play as a merc who switches sides and takes on jobs and kind of just exists as you upgrade your mech. It's a very gameplay focused series, very focused on the numbers in the back end. Your mechanical skill does matter, of course, but I feel like the back end, the building, matters just as much, if not more, which could be a turnoff for some people, but I think it's one of the things that makes this series unique, that it does generally well through most of the series. A couple dips and a couple like high points, so if that kind of stuff, if you're looking for just pure action, I think there are entries in the series like Last Raven that can meet you there, but I think what it does unique, the build, is kind of what kind of makes it still worth playing through them. I would say I overall, we'll see by the end how I feel, had fun. I think it's got their breakpoints. I think it's got its dips. I don't think the series overall is great. Maybe good. We'll see. But it doesn't really matter that much, because what it does that's unique is engaging for the whole play. And you could always just hit the highlights if you're interested in jumping into them, because they're usually very incremental, or expansions. Anyways, I guess we'll start with Armored Core 1. I'm just gonna put it somewhere. We'll see where it goes. Or maybe we'll put Armored Core 1 here. No wait, we'll put it here. You might don't think about the other tiers right now. Don't think about them. I think Armored Core 1 is one of the best ones. You're like, why is it here then? We'll get to that later. I liked Armored Core 1. I think it's a little bit less focused on making a variety of mechs and stuff, and so is most of the series, especially the old gen games. But a bit more focused on gaining an identity and attachment to a singular mech, making very, it's tough. A lot making slow progress to kind of sell and buy and flesh out a mech that can meet any situation, that also kind of you like, it's a play style you enjoy, or it looks cool, right? I did quads. I had quad mech with a mix of laser weapons and other stuff. Low ammo or high ammo, low firepower stuff for missions with lots of guys, and then big weapons on the back for armored cores and stuff like that. And it felt really good finally getting like something together that just felt badass. You're rolling down these hallways and you're like, yeah, I'm in my fucking quads and it looks cool and it sounds cool, and you're doing good because you got all that money to be able to pull the thing off, and the missions are all real dark and dystopian and shit, so it just kind of has this atmosphere, and every part you pick, because there's not a shitload, has like impact. They all feel pretty meaningful. You're not playing a game of increments like you do in some of them. It's pretty large changes every time you buy something. It feels pretty good. We talked about it. It kind of reminds me in a way of like really old RPGs where you level up and it's a big deal, right? And it feels really good. And nowadays you get a lot more incremental stuff, and you never really feel the improvement. Not just this series, but just in general, and a lot of RPG element type of games. But this had that feel of like big changes, so that was something I really liked. Obviously, the atmosphere was cool. That you got a good feel of who the corporations were, where you kind of fell as like a mercenary. Just the general look. I mean, yeah, there's a certain, I don't even know if I'd call it nostalgia. I didn't have a PS1, but it's not that different than like an N64. But a certain nostalgia, I'm sure, to the visuals. But just that it was always dark. It was like always like night. It was, a lot of derelict areas or empty areas, or cold like hallways and stuff, and subterranean locations, and just war scenes and stuff. And I feel like they really, for the PS1, really kind of carved out this little feel that, maybe in the grand scheme of all games and all media isn't like unique or something, but coupled with the gameplay and kind of the flow of really feeling like you're kind of this merc who's barely making it by money-wise. It kind of really matches the aesthetic and stuff, and I like that. It was cool. I think the game's length was a good pace. I think most of Armored Core games have a good pace. They're not all super long. They don't really overstay their welcome usually, unless they just suck in general, right? There's a couple that do. There's a couple that are too long and pace poorly, but I think Armored Core 1 is just clean. It's just, like I said, the choices you make, the look of it, stuff like that, they just all kind of work. The music, not always perfectly fitting, but enjoyable, and I wouldn't say it's like ill-fitting. There's some that have good music that doesn't fit the vibe. I think because Armored Core isn't trying to tell like an emotional story, or one that's like full of like crazy atmosphere, they can kind of throw in some random kind of more bumping music and it still fits. The kind of more grim atmosphere they're going for. Yeah. Some problems with Armored Core 1, obviously, though, are controls. I got used to the trigger controls to move up and down. AC5 sweep. Verdict A won't play super poorly, but yeah, AC5. Yeah, it's gonna sweep. It's gonna sweep the fucking shit off of the floor, but it's gonna sweep something. But yeah, I think and this is a problem with a lot of old gen games. Old gen is anything before 4. Well, is it? I would say it's anything before 4. I don't know if it's considered anything before Nexus, but Nexus is the first one that's dual stick, which is the point. The trigger controls to move up and down The stuff they did with Echo Knight and all that, some of their other games, just feels fucking horrible. It does not feel good. And when they move away from it, I don't think anything was really lost. But they do make it work. It is still important to the game. While I don't think it's like the ultimate goal of what the series should be, I do think it that limitation or that problem in a way springboards into important parts of the game, which is the turning speed, the size of your reticle, stuff like that. If you had better control, those things wouldn't really be a factor, and because of how slow and deliberate old Armored Core is, in a way, the fucked controls are really important. Now, I think you could still have dual stick and still have turn speed and still have reticle aim, because it does end up that way eventually, and I think it's better for it. But at this point, when they're not making use of dual sticks, they're not making use of sticks at all. It's D-pad tank controls, which is totally fine, because you are moving. It is tank controls. You are moving in a tank. You don't flip around. You have to turn slowly. There's a lot more heft and deliberate movement and stuff. But in terms of the aiming and all that, they make it work, and that's, I think, a big part of the identity of the old ones. And it's important, but I don't think how unintuitive it is makes for a good... It's not a good excuse for them always being that way until like 3.5 or whatever. I think it's something where if they just didn't have the sticks, it's a great way to weave the tough controls in with the deliberate movement and upgrade parts like the FCS and all that. But there's a point in the series where they should have ditched it, and it wasn't about 1 or 2 games, and they didn't until like 5 or 6, 7, 8 games later. So that's a weird point of the series for sure. And I'll also preface, I did beat all of these. Well, Ninebreaker, I didn't do every single challenge. I don't even know if Ninebreaker has like an end. But we did beat all these at least once. Some of them multiple times. So it's not just like I tested it out. Just so people know. Get my gamer cred. I got my license to talk shit about Armored Core. But, granted, I say that I hate that. Yeah, I didn't ever really vibe with how intuitive the controls were of Armored Core 1, but I still think it's one of the best ones. It's not a like horrible point. It's a thing I think would probably break most people these days, and not for a horrible reason. But if you get past that and get used to that deliberate movement and aim and stuff, it's pretty cool. It's neat. I didn't find it boring. It does. Another fucked part is, and this is the thing with a lot of old Armored Core games, there's some shit missions, right? Where they just kind of are exploring ideas just to do something different. The last mission's a great example. That do not mesh with what's good about it. Platforming, stuff like that. Armored Core 1 didn't have it super bad. There was some tough stuff for sure. But usually the difficulty in a lot of these old ones was the kind that's more like an eye roll. It's not one of those you're like, yeah, this is really fun to lose. I love to lose and I want to get better and improve. And a lot of the times it feels like you're getting fucking cheeseballed. The AI is not using a real mech, or they're just perfectly aiming, flying above you at all times. And usually the way you're going to beat a lot of these things is to counter cheese or to have just some kind of goofy bullshit builds or something like that. And it's not very satisfying on that front. Or there's just like really bad missions like in Another Age that just are like they just ran out of ideas and really stretched it thin and just made some real stinkers. But usually there's a lot of variety, and I really appreciate that, and most of them hit just fine. But there's definitely in each game, especially in the old gens, that have like that one or two, sometimes more like in another age, missions that are like, I also didn't really enjoy fighting ACs in the old games all that much. I know some people love it. I didn't really care about full doing the arena in almost any of these. I found a lot of the AC fights to be a little samey, and if not samey, yeah, just like kind of goofy. I think it depends a lot on where you fight some of the enemies too, but I think how difficult it is sometimes to like have multiple mechs on hand and stuff means that sometimes it's a quality of life issue, whether you want to like make a brand new mech from scratch to answer some of these other challenges and stuff. Not that I hate fighting the ACs in these, but I liked when it utilized a mixture of tactics, AI that actually was like had like certain jobs. Like if you're fighting two guys, if a guy was like far away, and then a guy was like he's the close range guy, and then there's like things you can block, like vision with, and like elevations to work with. That kind of stuff was fun, where it felt like there was like a tactical bit to the action. When it was just you, this is more me talk in general. We'll probably get through a lot of general stuff and we'll move quicker through the rest of these. But it was just like you in a flat arena with infinite height in a circle. You're just like, I mean, it's really just people fucking jumping around left and right, backwards, and blasting each other. And I mean, that's fun. It can be fun. But I think in some of these, there's just the amount of like expression out there isn't like super high of skill expression, and a lot of it's build, which is important, but like it just kind of gets a little samey sometimes. So it's cool when there's a nice mix there and I can think about movement and cover and how weapons will play into that. I think some of the best ones do, and then some of them are just like whatever. Anyways, I'll explain that as I go. Maybe it makes it sound like I hate fighting all mechs. That's not true at all. Some of them, that's the best part, but I don't think until like way later do I actually start really enjoying mech fights as much as I enjoy the level crawls and taking out, not because they're easier. I mean, a lot of times those are harder, but watching your ammo and planning out your mechs and stuff are kind of mixed missions. But anyways, yeah, Armored Core 1 got some shit missions. The last one's horrible. You just skip the bosses, and when you're not skipping the boss, you're doing platforming, and it's like really long. And I don't think there's any checkpoints in Armored Core 1. It's just dog shit. It's horrible ending. The game feels like a fucking troll. But generally they're cool. They're fun. So. Anyways, Armored Core 1, definitely one of my favorites. To reiterate, atmosphere, choice. Every choice you make, every purchase you make feels really impactful. Obviously there's novelty because there's not many games like Armored Core, so that's the first one I played. I was like, oh, they're in the Armored Core series. I mean, I've played mech games before. There's a novelty to making your mech and seeing it come together and it working or not working. If there wasn't any challenge, then it not working wouldn't ever matter. So when you can overcome that through builds, it's really cool. But yeah, stuff like music, like I said, that was cool. It's definitely got really fucked controls, but sometimes it works to its advantage. There's more I could say on it, but one of the, I guess, the good and bad points of the series. One of the good things for this tier list and one of the bad things for the series is that it's composed of very incremental changes. That sometimes is a good thing, I guess, for the series, you could say, because they can start to really hammer out little details and improve here and there. On the other hand, I don't know what they're charging for some of these, but it makes for sometimes a samey experience. Depends on the mission quality. I think the incremental changes they do are for the most part fine. I think it starts to get a little too much. by the time you're in I don't know. I would say there's no particular one where the incremental expansion style is like too much. I think Another Age is probably one of them. It just feels like it shouldn't even be there. Like Ninebreaker probably shouldn't be there. Stuff like that. But for the most part, a lot of the sequel ones are like better. They improve things in solid enough ways where I feel like it justifies their existence. In the entirety of the series, is there too many? Just in general, probably. I think it could be a lot worse though. If the sequel ones were phoning it in a bit more, had much shorter campaigns with much less new stuff and really dud kind of missions like Another Age, then maybe. But so I'm kind of split on that. I was like, I think there's probably a few too many kind of like incremental like side upgrade games. I think the 3 generations probably got some of your worst offenders, but I don't think it's a huge deal. Point is, there's 3 Armored Core 1 games, so Project Phantasma is the next one. Do I think Phantasma is as good as the first one? It's hard to say. Project Phantasma is like 3 hours long, 4 hours long. It's the same gameplay to the T. You're gonna get a few different parts, and you can carry over your mech from the first game. So I will say, in these old ones where you can't really like save a bunch of mechs, I generally didn't change a whole lot. So 1, 2, and 3, I'm playing with mostly the same mech. So I can't really speak for the build craft there. I might change a few weapons, and if they balance, change some stuff, take some shit out, or put something else in, but for the most part, I'm just rolling the same thing, and it's a continuation. So that progression of money, barely being able to keep over the debt. I also I save quit on this series a lot so that I can beat missions, because in this series, usually when you lose a mission, you can't redo it. But I kind of like to get over that hump and try to beat those and sell parts and make my mech a different way to beat that mission. In the 3s, I start to just say fuck it and just move on because we have so many games to get to. So that might suck for some people. I think in a way, some missions require specific things like hovers or, you know, large ammo weapons that you just might not even think to put on. And if you just roll with the punches, you're not going to go back and do that mission until you finish the game. So I was kind of okay with saving quitting. It does mean you have a lot more money, but I preferred the build options and build puzzles that I gotta overcome because of that. Anyways, Project Phantasma is like 3 hours long, 4 hours long. It's like 13, 14, 15 missions. I don't know. It's more Armored Core 1. The story... Oh, I should talk about the story in the first one too. Is a bit more focused on an actual person in Armored Core Project Phantasma, or an antagonist. But it's just more of the same. They're good, pretty good missions. There's not as many, I don't recall many bullshit ones. I mean, the final boss is a little goofy, but you just fight him. There's no like run up to him or anything. You could just change your build and go right back in. So I didn't hate him. We joke about him, the Phantasma guy, but for the most part, I mean, I think it's... Oh, and when we finish this, I will put these in like the order of like which ones I prefer over the other from left to right, but I'm gonna save that. The Armored, I mean, problem is with Armored Core, like 1 generation, they're all kind of the fucking thing. Anyways, I would say, yeah, I would say it's about on the same level because it is so similar. Maybe I put Phantasma a little lower, but there's not much else to say on Phantasma. They add in some stuff, they get to carry over some stuff, just exclusive shit, I think, from the first game and all that. Carry over credits. I didn't do Human Plus in any of these games also. I think that's important to note. I think Human Plus honestly should have just been a fucking thing by default. I think it opens up builds. Now let me explain Human Plus for you people don't know, I guess. So Human Plus in the first game and in most games, is the idea that you can be augmented to have your mech, have your capabilities be greater than just a standard human. So to get that in the first game, you have to game over in debt. So like minus 50k, minus 100k, something like that. And then you will become human plus. And I think you can do that like 4 or 5 times, or is it just one time in the originals? I don't know. I didn't play it with human plus. This lets you like boost longer, shoot weapons on your back without bracing yourself, which means you could move and shoot any big weapon, right? Which is huge. That allows you to pretty much go way lighter and use crazier shit. You know, I might not use quads then, who knows? Because quads are like, you know, you can shoot and move and stuff like that. Same with tanks and treads and all that. I think the tank treads you could hover was the thing back then. It's like you can hover and move while shooting big weapons, where the quads you could just shoot on the move. Which is funny because in 6, the quads are the hover ones, and the tank you can move and shoot. But anyways, yeah. So I did not have Human Plus. I think if I ever recommended anybody to play these, there's enough goofy shit, and it's harder. I wouldn't call these like insanely hard games or anything, but they're challenging. Usually in the kind of not as fun way, but challenging just enough where, like I said, your choices and builds and stuff need to be thought about, which is important. So they're a good challenge, but when you actually like game over a lot kind of challenge, it's usually because of goofy shit. So I guess it depends on the person. Like for me, it's like when I'd lose. I shouldn't say that. I lost all the time. When you lose for an extended periods of time, it's usually not it's not that kind of fun. Like where you're like mechanically learning something. I'll lose in these once or twice on a mission, be like, okay, I need to make these changes, and then I'll get better, and then I won't lose as much, and then I might have a few more things I need to tune, and then I get better. And usually missions that stand out that you lose on are like usually kind of lame-o missions, like the final mission of the first game, or just a final boss. That's reasonable. Like the Phantasma final boss, I don't even understand really how the kill happened. I don't know if there was some weird damage taking calculation or what. We just annihilated them after failing forever, and the fight doesn't have very good. It's not very well visualized, so not a great fight. But anyways, I don't know where I was going with that tangent. Oh yeah, but the series is challenging, but I think it's got like just the right level of challenge that requires you to actually think about builds. If it was just piss easy, you just like not do anything. If you're the kind of person who only will make changes when, you know, you need to, right? That's something that we'll bring up in 6. If you don't want to build and try different shit, you're going to have a tough time in the old games. Where in later games past old gen, it's going to be fine. You could just use default shit. And I mean, you could probably use default shit in the old ones, but there's enough challenge in the old gen where, and this is the good challenge where you need to play with the systems, right? Like they need to make you play with the system. It's just that sometimes when it is more mechanical, when it is more goofy, and it's playing into the horrible camera. Oh, I forgot about that. The camera is just bad for old gen for a lot of them. You have to look. There's always some guy floating above you in an AC busting your ass, and like you have to be like, when you look up, you're staring up your max ass, and you just can't see anything. And you're coupled with the control issues. It's just kind of a pain. So unless you're playing something that is like a bunny hopping around and above dudes, like you're gonna have an issue. Like I played a lot of quad, so I was like always having to look up. And I mean, I could jump around, but I was like, not until later I really went a little harder on that with quad. So anyway, I guess we'll keep getting into it. Kind of going off on random tangents, but I hadn't thought about every little thing on the series yet. But yeah, so old gen, solid challenge, but speckled throughout is some bullshit. So, whereas in a lot of later gen games, they're like piss easy. to the point where you don't change your build ever, but they might have like crispier mechanical stuff. So it's kind of a give and take. So Master of Arena, I would put Master of Arena above Project Phantasma, maybe even above Armored Core 1. I don't know, it's hard to say. Once again, it's a first gen game, so it's the same. Obviously this has a lot of parts. This has a much longer campaign than Project Phantasma. Introduces, well, the arenas in Project Phantasma, but this one, Master of Arena, couples the arena with the story. So you'll do missions as a mercenary who's trying to get revenge on people that Nineball killed. And Nineball is kind of this antagonist through the first game, Nineballer or whatever, who's like an AI that's found out it's an AI that controls the Raven's Nest and shit. The essential what governs, or what not what governs, what manages all the mercenaries, the independent mercenaries. So anyways, you're an actual person who's trying to, like, I guess you're always an actual person, but trying to get revenge. So you're going through the arena and you're doing all these missions for corporations and stuff so they can sponsor you so that you can get to Nineballer. And that's kind of a cool setup. I think that's something to break into with the rest of the series. Is usually Armored Core stories aren't good at all. They have good setup, atmosphere, and just like settings. So like what I mean by good setup is like they have like a good start, like a good idea. Like this is in a city controlled by an AI in a post-apocalyptic underground world, or you're after revenge from Nineballer in a, you know, a destroyed world where Max fight each other in arena for cred essentially, and you know you also are, you know, be fighting other corporations that control the world and the ruins of humanity and shit like that. You know, cool setups, right? They sound neat. They're very bleak. What you are as a mercenary, how the missions you choose them, and how that kind of atmosphere of, I think is pretty well realized in most of them. Not all of them, but most of them. And then after that, they don't really do much with story once the game gets going. Some of them do okay. Some of them, there's like one that actually probably has like a good intro, or two maybe, there's like an actual interesting story or keeps something going. Maybe a few more than that. But it's not a series that I think is you're gonna play for the story. Like I said, if you're into the narrative stuff, it might, you know, the atmosphere and the setups are cool. But a lot of the, you know, the dialogue's going to be kind of goofy if there is any. The voice acting's not really good, and most of these, not until way later, is it like, okay, and it dips. You can tell they really cut corners in some with the VA in some of these. So. But anyways, the momentum of the stories and stuff, it's usually just you doing missions, and then they'll build into some final arc by the end of each of these. It'll be either some kind of alien mystery, or it'll be some kind of culmination of the war, or, you know, some personal thing, I guess, like Master of Arena. And it's cool. I mean, it builds up enough to have like a cool little final fight in most of these, or final couple set pieces. It's not just uninteresting, but you're not going to get into a character. You're not going to have an arc. You're not going to have this development of, like, you know, where you're really just digging into the lore and the world and stuff. Like, you're going to understand what each company's about in the good ones, generally in old gen. You're going to get what makes them tick. They have like an identity, right? You know, like these ones are the fancy guys, or these guys are the ones with like a lot of soldiers, or these ones are the ones with all the tech that are like looking into alien stuff. Kisaragi and 3 or something, you know, they're not big players, but like they're there, and it's like you kind of understand some of their movements and shit enough to flavor the missions, but that's pretty much it. You're not going to go much farther in that story for almost all the series. Stuff like 6 are an exception to that, so. But that's kind of what's different about Master Arena a little bit, is that it is technically a little bit more of a personal story. There isn't much story. That's just the setup, and that's kind of where it goes. You don't have a voice. think in any of these you actually talk. All voiceless protagonists. I thought in Verdict that you did for a bit. I thought you were Fat Man because just the way a lot of the scenes synced up, and that was kind of cool. But then I find out he's just a pilot. So I was like, shit. So, yeah, you're always just I'm a voiceless dude, which is fine. But yeah, so. And yeah, that's kind of Master Arena. It's got a interesting way of going about the missions where it mixes arena and actual mercenary work. It was like a cool little setup of revenge and shit. But, you know, you get to carry your Mac from the first 2 games. Some new parts that are pretty cool. You play around with the builds probably more in this than you would in Project Phantasma, and it's got a little bit longer length arenas. Help with that a bit. And the pace is good. I think it's one of the best ones. It was one I was actually gonna skip before I actually decided to do all of them, because it sounded like it was just gonna be just arena fights, and I didn't know. That sounded kind of like it was just gonna be like pretty much a fucking DLC, but no, it was woven into the story and the gameplay, mission structure pretty well. So. I don't remember if it had any bullshit missions. I mean, it's been a few weeks now, and a lot of these run together, so I don't think anything really stood out. It's pretty clean. I was probably also getting better at that point. I mean, it does have, I think, platforming at the end and shit. I mean, most Armored Core games have some goofy fucking final thing, but it's usually fine. The first game's got like the worst final. Anyways, yeah, I don't know. They're all pretty close to each other. I would say, yeah, that Master of Arena. I think maybe Master of Arena would be better than the first one. Possibly. Just because, I mean, if you think about it in numbers, right? Like, it has more stuff. It has more, you know, arenas. It's got, you know, different kinds of, like, content you go to. But there's something about that simple, just laser focus of the first game and how the upgrades work and stuff. And that the expansion games don't, I mean, it's not until like way later, like Ninebreaker, like The Last Raven and stuff, where it's like you almost like need to have played the old ones and then convert your shit in to even play the fucking things. You don't probably need to do that with these, but you know, if you are, you're gonna a little of the experience is gonna be weird. You know, the Human Plus shit carrying over. And stuff. Maybe not being designed around that exactly, but kind of being an odd choice. It's one of those things where it's like Master Arena, I guess, would technically, like, just by numbers be better than Armored Core 1 because it just has more. But I kind of like that laser focus of the first one. They're pretty much the same. I mean, and they are the same gameplay. It's the fucking same. So at this point, it's apples. I don't want to say apples and oranges, but you're splitting hairs. It doesn't really matter. I think Phantasma, maybe just because it's a little shorter. Yeah, you know, maybe I put it at the end. Anyways, we'll see where these move in the long run, though. Armored Core 2. Am I putting it here? We'll see as we go. Like I said, my list, it's like, it's not about like just raw numbers and shit. It's about relative ratings. So until I put them on there, and then I'm like, oh no, this won't work, then I'm just, it's a placeholder. Armored Core 2, I mean, it's the same shit as the first ones. Different coat of paint. I don't think it's quite as dark and as bleak, but it is still in the setting, the setup bleak. It is technically in the same world as Armored Core 1. They don't move away from this gen until 3? This world, I think. So this is set like a little ways after the first 3. I think the villain of this is even the hero, the Master of Arena or some shit. I'm not sure if that's 100% true. Because you just don't really know fucking anything about anything or anybody in these usually, outside of just the general gist of like the companies and little movements and stuff. But yeah, Armored Core 2. It's the first PS2 one. I mean, it looks crispier. It looks, like the jump from PS1 to PS2 would be. I don't think it's, like I said, color and aesthetics wise is as interestingly grim looking, but there is more locations and little set pieces they can pull off and stuff. But for the most part, it plays the same. It's not twin stick. It's triggers. It's D-pad. Tank controls. And at that point, you're like, okay, I think maybe the leap to the next console, we could do something to maybe take it to the next level, right? Let's evolve the series just a little bit. Not just, it doesn't have to just be controls, but just the feel and just the movement and the kinds of things we're going to try to pull off. It's very safe. And after already having like 2 expansion games and then going into this, you're just like, it's not bad. If you just put them all in a vacuum next to each other, Armored Core 2 it'd be up there. But where it falls in the series, I don't think it makes enough attempts to really clean anything up. Whether it's controls, whether it's some goofy missions here and there, whether it's a new attempt at storytelling or world building, or it's got good music. They went a little harder on the music, which was cool. And because the game doesn't have I feel like as stark of a atmosphere, the music fits a little bit better because it is just kind of more bumping and stuff like that. It's not at odds with anything, but it's very much just kind of safe by the numbers, more visual. There is it is a little crispier gameplay wise, but honestly, I can barely recall like a super big difference. I think you get overboost in Armored Core 2. Was it Armored Core 2? Or was that? Yeah, it should be 2. I'm pretty sure that was Armored Core 2. It's hard to remember sometimes because they are so similar. I'm like, it's just this big one long set of missions, right? Where the game starts to look a little better as you go, and then it jumps to 4 and it's like way different. But yeah, so you're getting some new things like that. So that's like the super speed boost and stuff, and it's neat. I mean, you're restarting your mech, so it's that building of cash and selling and stuff, which is fun. It's fun to do again. I didn't hate Armored Core 2. I didn't dislike it. I had fun with it. It's got some goofy, annoying missions here and there, but I think for the most part, it kind of just sits a little lower for me because that feeling of being a merc, that that atmosphere, and what you kind of hope in a console leap, just weren't quite there. And I don't think they make up for it in like better mission design with like way more cool stuff happening, or more information for you to make like tactical choices, or more builds you can have at once, or anything like that, right? I was saying in the first games, I was like, okay, well, we either really lean into this one mech fits all, or we could start having, like I can make a mech for all sorts of situations, and they give me a bunch of info and tactics, and, it's like, or, make it more about failing and retrying and stuff with new stuff, or with new mechs, and, and they don't really pick like a lane. Not that they have to, but they don't really like take it anywhere. And it's not like the fucking first games were perfect, so I think it's just far too safe in a series that up to this point needed to go a little beyond. Like I said, I still like Armored Core 1, Phantasm Master Arena, but in the grand scheme of things, they're fine. They're solid games. I would say maybe even good. It really depends on how you feel about mech building and how the atmosphere hits you. I would say most people wouldn't like them, but Armored Core is a niche series anyway, so it doesn't matter what other people like. But I think that's important to mention because, like, in the grand scheme of all games, where am I at this point, right? Armored Core is like, it's cool, it's entertaining, I am having fun with it, but they're not great. They're not like super good. Well, I go into 2 and I'm like, okay, let's see where they go from here. And it's like kind of a step down, which is kind of funny. That the first ones are like some of the best ones in the whole series, and that's my general opinion on them, right? I think maybe I'll put Armored Core 2. So this is Another Age. Another Age is one of my least favorite Armored Core games, easily. I didn't like it at all. I thought it was just kind of bad. And it's like, you're like, well, why would it be bad? Because it's the same shit as 2. That's not why it's bad, but like, why would you think it's like worse than Armored Core 2? I might have to put more tiers in here. We'll see. We'll see as we go. It's at least under Armored Core 2, but it's actually a pretty big like amount of like difference in how much I like them. It's not like a little bit. It's like I really don't like Another Age compared to 2, and I don't even love 2. No, I just think 2 is kind of okay. We'll see. I think this is more how I'm feeling on how much I dislike it compared to 2. You might ask why. Well, one, I mean, not like, so we could just go off of all sorts of shit. So one, the structure. So this game, instead of like a story, goes for like just a world map with missions, which, okay, the story's not been that crazy in the first place. The setting, is still Mars. I didn't mention that. Armored Core 2 is you're on Mars instead of Earth, like in the first ones. It's still the same companies in the world, but you're in a different place because the government has taken control of Earth, and now the companies are going for Mars. Another Age is just more missions on Mars or Earth or something. I don't even remember exactly, but anyways, it's just a world map where you just go through different missions. It's usually like the same map or two in each node, and there's like 20 something nodes. I don't know exactly. They're just doing a lot of missions in the same areas. So already, like I said with Armored Core 2, you're running out of ideas, or not running out of ideas, you're not really pushing any new ideas, you're not really trying to evolve the formula. And if you're not going to go anywhere with story or mission design or leaning into like, information and tactics, or builds even harder, or putting in just something, just going somewhere, then it's like, what are you going to do? And so the answer is Another Age, which is just the same thing. It's just more. That feels like one of the lazier ones. It has lots of parts, but most of them are like recolors, and there's way too much part bloat. I don't feel like the building, while the building is still, I guess, satisfying because it's still working off the Armored Core 1 kind of thing. Not every choice you make, every part you make is this big, monumental, awesome feeling because it's so incremental and there's so many of them. It's cool, and like, if you just wanted to make thousands of mechs, there's lots of parts so you could do that. But I feel like they're not super distinct. A lot of it's going to be like, this one has a little less ammo and it has colored brown and it weighs a little bit less, and it's like, it's not like a huge difference. It's not like you're gonna change your play style or make different approaches or have different tools. And so that kind of sucks. The structure, I don't like that it's just missions on a board. I mean, that's already what Armored Core is, but like, it's removed even that little setup and structure that the old ones have. So most games would have like, what, 30? Well, Phantasm has like 15 missions or something. That's probably not the exact number, but in there, in the teens somewhere. The first one's like 30, 40, 50 or something. I think most of them aren't getting over like 40, right? Phantasm, Another Age has like 100. So you're like, whoa, that's really awesome. That's a lot of missions. Yeah. So most of them are either 2 seconds long, really just kind of like simple, dull, like kill 5 MTs in a office building. Or they're like, hey, here's a really goofy, gimmicky mission. Like, jump between all of these cliffs with all of these rocket hands coming at you, infinitely spawning, and they can go 90 degrees and curl around, and like, it's just like, you gotta make certain mechs for some of those missions to beat them, and you have to beat all of them. You can't skip any. So it's cool that you might have to make a mech for those kinds of things, but Jesus, man, they stretch. They have so few ideas left by the end. I don't even know. I mean, if they had more budget, or if they like try to go somewhere with the gameplay, they'd have plenty of ideas. But it feels very like cheap DLC. Like I said, between the knockoff parts, the color swaps, the overuse of some of the maps, the gimmicky level design that's just using existing stuff, and like it feels like I'm playing like a ROM hack half the time, or they're trying to fuck with me, like they're trolling me or something. Like it's something you'd see in some goofy Doom mod, right? Like, there's just so many missions like that. There's so few that stand out. There's some big bosses and some cool ones, but there's so much dog shit for every good one. Lots of AC fights against like multiple dudes. They're not all fucked, but they're generally, I don't find them very fun. I've said my piece on old gen AC fights too. A lot of the times it ends up just being really goofy, not satisfying. Whether it's just builds or mechanical stuff, it doesn't matter. It's just the arenas you fight them in, the AI. The AI is not good in almost any of these games, I would say. But especially the old gen ones, like it feels hard to really be like having fun with some of the big duels and fights, which Another Age has a fair few of. When they're just like, you're seeing them getting stuck on objects or not being able to like rise up a story, or you know, clearly like in some kind of cheat mech or something, which I mean, hey, there's nothing wrong with that, you know, having a boss that has a different set of parameters, because obviously the player character, I mean, it's gonna be, you know, they need to, with the balance, right? It's like, it's not like a, like what, Souls or something, right? They're not gonna always be the same strength as the player, but when it is about, you know, fighting these like mechs with certain builds, it's supposed to be equal footing. When you're seeing all these like goofy enemies jumping around and Ultra Human Plus and with perfect aim, and you're just like, like, okay, here we go, man, in this stage. But then the AI sucks on top of that. It just doesn't feel very satisfying to beat a lot of these. And it sounds like a get filtered moment, get good, but I just don't find the movement and the challenges you're going up against in a lot of these early AC fights to just really be there. I think some of the old gens have good AC fights that I like, but a lot of the time it just feels like another arena battle. They're just not very satisfying challenges. I prefer to lose in a lot of the other like dungeon crawl missions or something, where I can make some decisions or change some tactics and I feel like I'm just cheesing or something. But anyways, yeah, Another Age, just bad missions. Mostly bad missions. There's not a whole lot of good ones. No way to skip any of them really, so you have to do them. The builds aren't that much more exciting. You can convert your stuff from 2 again. Yeah, there's nothing to say on story or anything. I mean, there's little briefings. I think they're still voice acted in that one. At some point they drop voice acting on briefings. I'd have to remember which one it was at this point. Doing a shitload of homework. Like I said, they all kind of run together to a certain extent. So that wasn't ever the biggest. I think it was next. But anyways. Yeah, it's just those missions. I think that's the biggest thing. It's the missions, and that you're already kind of disappointed in Armored Core 2 not going really anywhere after the first gens, and then it's like, well, now there's more Armored Core 2, and it's even less risk taking, and it's like the lower bar of quality, and it's just like so I think it's one of the shittier ones. I think that's one of the ones that really shows off like the expansion style DLC kind of vibe that the series goes for a lot of the time, and in its worst light. So I think it's one of the down there with it's weird because there's others that I'm gonna put down there maybe even lower, but for like different reasons. Mechanically, Armored Core 2 Another Age is fine. Like, if you like the first gen style. But it's all about the structure and the missions. Whereas some of these later ones are going to be on the same tier as Another Age, not because they're frustrating or have like horrible missions, but just the idea of the game, like Ninebreaker or Formula Front. And then you get stuff like 5, which is just bad quality. That's bad. You know, a lot of the gameplay is just bad. A lot of the mission structures and stuff like story. You're gonna have stuff in like the Another Age tier, but for very different reasons, which will be interesting. So it's kind of hard to really pick why, like which one's like really bad compared to the others, because it's generally not for the same reasons. It's not as comparable. But anyways, so that's Another Age. Armored Core 3 is next. Yeah, Armored Core 3 is good. I would say Armored Core 3 is one of the best ones. It is probably my favorite old gen game. Yeah, I think Armored Core 3 is. Armored Core 3 feels like an actual step up from the first. That's what you want Armored Core 2 to have been. It's still similar to those. It's not like that different, but it feels like, okay, if we're going to stick to the same style, here's the upgrade you're expecting. And that's Armored Core 3. Armored Core 2 is like, okay, we're going to have the exact same style, and let's literally just keep them. So Armored Core 3, the projectile speeds, just the feel of the movement, all the parts you have, stuff like that. Everything just feels crispier there. It feels just nicer to move, nicer to shoot. It's hard to really like explain without like showing those differences in the feel, but from the beginning, just as soon as you put your hands on the controller after playing 5 games, it just feels a little bit more right. The difficulty in this one I think is tuned pretty well. It's not the hardest of the Armored Cores, but it allows for a lot more skill build expressions, right? You're not going to get like build checked on too many things. You can just try a lot of shit. It still has enough challenge where you will want to change your build, but it's got the most interesting, not the most, out of all these up to now, the best story. It's got a cool setup. This is the one I was talking about, where you're in an underground city in a post-apocalyptic world where companies are at war, but the whole thing is controlled by an AI. And from Go, that's what's going on. So you're in these cool kind of like city environments in this underground where they have like nature areas and shit too, and it's just a cool setup. And then that builds into this kind of neat, like, you know, the AI is breaking down and the companies are, you know, either still at war or they're like, you know, teaming together or something. And then, you know, what happens afterwards, right? After you've stopped it all. And, you know, it's a cool setup. It's a neat little thing. All these factions at war while there's this greater momentum and plot going on. And then obviously the AI has access to all these big, you know, crazy bosses and stuff you get to fight. We got like hovers with water and stuff we're gonna think about. So there's like underwater, like dragon robots you're fighting, and like giant mechs flying around, and on top of that, like fun AC fights that do utilize like your cover and stuff a little bit more, and aren't just like ape shit like Zerg fights every single time. I mean, it just feels good. Good alternate missions where, you know, you can focus on like, you know, like, oh, there's one where you gotta chase down like a fucking bus or something. It's like, so I gotta rebuild my Mac for speed or something, and that's kind of neat to try to do. Or you can just not do it. And, it feels, it's got a good list of parts. I can't remember if this was the one that introduced the heat. I think heat might have been an Armored Core 2. I'd have to check. Well, regardless, it doesn't matter. We'll get into heat when it becomes a problem. The thing with heat is they introduced that, and so you have to have like a radiator, is that you just don't care. I almost never, once you get a good enough radiator to handle heat, you just ignore it. That's why I can't remember which one it started in, because it's just, you just fucking ignore it. You just don't think about it at all. Until next. And then you're like, all right. I still don't have to think about it much, but I know a lot of people do a lot, and it really kind of hampers what kind of builds you're going to do next. But So you got your overboost, you got your quick turn you can unlock in Armored Core 3 and shit, so you can spin and all that. That's like a bonus thing. I think that was an Armored Core 3. So exterior, interior parts. Let me double check that's Armored Core 3. That's also something I didn't use a lot through most of the series. It was nice to have the option to have interior parts and exterior parts. Just more stuff you could just put on your mech. But a lot of the time, the weight limits and energy requirements meant they just weren't worth the trouble. And I definitely think that I would have preferred that they were just a part of any kind of build and you just picked what you wanted out of them instead of whether to have them or not, because a lot of the time they just weren't worth it over like a bigger gun. So if I can find this. Yeah, so it has inside, it has extension. That's what I thought. So extension ends up being cool because you can put on auxiliary boosters or quick turn, and then that kind of just adds. It helps with the camera because the camera's still the same in this one. But it feels a little bit better. The FCS, the speed of everything feels like it works best. The trigger up and downs ever felt, and the D-pad tank controls and stuff, which D-pad tank controls is not any problem. They allow you to, I think in another age, use the stick to move, but I don't. I use the D-pad. Well, no, I make myself use the stick eventually because her exteriors are clicking left stick in. So when you want to click left stick in to turn with quick boost, you have to also turn. So you kind of have to use the stick. So there's a point where I do use the stick. But I don't. It's definitely the up and down that's the problem. Yeah. So Armored Core 3. There's not a whole lot to say. It still plays kind of like. Still is. What the hell is that? Still does kind of play like old gen. Like it feels like more of like an upgrade. I wouldn't say an evolution. It feels like an upgrade to Armored Core 1. And they really nail like the atmosphere and the feel, and the music has a lot more like gravity to it. Don't get me wrong, the music in the old ones before that were good, but this one has like the vocals and just this kind of like gravity, like there's there's this big like a unique feeling, like there's something that's there's something going on, and it adds a little, the HUD, the menus are like this clean kind of like orange kind of, I don't know, there's this way they handle the aesthetic and then the sound and stuff to kind of give it this unique feeling and give it this gravity. It's not like super duper epic story, like they're not like just really nailing, like there's not really any characters. It's still not a good story in the grand scheme of things, but for Armored Core, at least all of the faction movements and all the momentum that builds up has like a stronger feeling, a stronger atmosphere to it because of the aesthetics and the sound and a really strong setting. And then they kind of go somewhere with it. They kind of keep the momentum going. It's not, like I said, they all kind of do that same structure, but most of them just kind of fizzle out or don't do anything special with it. I feel like as far as that structure is, cool setup, fighting with factions, mysterious finale or a big finale. I think Armored Core 3 handles that some of the best out of all the old ones. It keeps the mystery going. It keeps you wondering, what can this AI do, or what are these people gonna do, these factions, or should we leave or should we revolt against this thing? And they ask you some questions like that, and it's kind of fun to play with, and that's about as far as it goes, but I think that's enough. And then on top of that, obviously having more interesting missions with more fleshed out budgets and levels and fights and just a better feel to the controls and stuff. Ends up just being really clean. And like I said, I like the difficulty. There's a little bit of bullshit, but I think for the most part, it's, well, not super hard. or no, not super easy. I'd say it's just like kind of like normal difficulty. It's kind of like just fine. I think that allows for a lot more fun build options and goofing around and stuff, right? It's kind of a fun way to kind of play out that mercenary in a World at War kind of thing. So yeah, that's one of the best ones. Not very controversial. This list is not going to be super. There might be one controversial pick. Well, there's going to be probably the entire thing might be controversial for AC fans. I don't know. I'm not trying to be fucking edgy, but there's a reason that the tier list has space. Yeah, Silent Line. I'd put it right there with 3. Do I put Silent Line above the original or anything? Probably. I think they all exist in the same realm. It's splitting hairs, like I said. I mean, since they are kind of expansions, it's kind of whatever. I think after Silent Line is when shit starts getting weird, man. I think for the most part, the general quality outside like Another Age is like pretty steady. It's just fun, solid, decent games. With 3 and the original being kind of a high point. Yeah, after Silent Line it starts getting a little wacky, man. So, anywho, yeah, Silent Line is essentially so you're out of the city now, and the companies, the world is back to the way it was supposed to be, and now the companies are fucking it up again. Humanity's fucking it up again. Hell yeah. So now it's companies creating outposts and taking over the world and carving out land for themselves and fighting other companies. And but the thing is, there's this thing called the Silent Line where there's enemy fighters that are coming from it, and we can't get into it because there's just so much defense and just this area that we just can't get into or do anything. And it really doesn't go anywhere with that until like the very end. It's generally just companies at war with each other. It's a decent setup. Mysterious place and a newly discovered planet that you came up out of the underground to find. But it's mostly just factions at war. It's an expansion game to Armored Core 3. Feels good to play like Armored Core 3. More fun parts to mess with. A little bit more challenging, but not super hard or anything. An acceptable amount of challenge. It doesn't like hamper your builds or anything, and it doesn't have too many like goofy ass missions. One of the only ones that I think I first tried the final boss up to this point. So yeah, it's other than that, the music's fine. The aesthetics it's more daytime. It's not really dark like the other ones are. It's a lot more daytime missions and stuff because you're out there in the open world and shit, but it's still dark enough. It's more Armored Core 3. That's essentially what it is at the end of the day. The story by the end of it doesn't end up as cool. It's just this kind of like last stand mission, and you find out that the Silent Line is just another city or something, I guess, or was, or something. It's an interesting idea they play with, but it's kind of got this like cliffhang, like they left off or something because they did. And it has to do with, I guess, the other games, I suppose, but so, not as interesting. I feel like of a feel or of a momentum of story, but it's still got the good gameplay. It's still got cool missions. So it's still good. I don't know. Maybe put Silent Line below. I don't know. Objectively, I think it's like probably better because it does feel better and has good like stuff. But like that laser focus, that atmosphere, what these were when they came out versus where Silent Line is. I mean, that's kind of like why I put Armored Core 2. Like, yeah, that's kind I don't know. I'm fine with this. Like I said, I think this tier list, these ones in the middle here, it's splitting hairs. I think they're all pretty good. And yeah, and there's not gonna be another good Armored Core game till 4 answer. No, I'm just kidding. Last Raven and 4 are fine, but these ones are some of my top ones for sure. But anyways, we're on Nexus. This is the first one that has twin stick control. That's pretty hype, right? Do I put Nexus here? What do I even think about Nexus? This is a drop in the pan, dude. I barely remember the fucking thing at this point. I'd probably put Nexus below Armored Core 2. Yeah. I wasn't big into Nexus. I don't think it's like shit, like Another Age in some of the series, but I think it's a tier below Armored Core 2. So Nexus's thing is you get twin stick. It does take place in the same world, but the presentation, the cutscenes, the HUDs, some of the building balance, cooling, how that changes some of the FCS, which I don't think is a huge deal, and just the general mission design. It's just kind of weak. So to go into some of those, I guess the building thing. This is technically the start of 3.5 gen because it is kind of like another step up, a new change, right? It's not just it's kind of an incremental. It's not exactly the same thing like Silent Line is to 3, but it's like more of an incremental jump. It's kind of like what Armored Core 2 is if you don't think about the visuals to Armored Core 1. So it's not a huge change, but like it's something. So 1 to 2 is, 3 is to Nexus. But yeah, so your menus are changing. It's like a computer interface. It doesn't feel good. They don't have voiced comms anymore before the mission, the briefings, I mean. So you have a little bit of a disconnect with like, they don't even explain what's going on in the mission briefings. They're just like, here's the mission, go to it. Here's the map. So much of the story is told through emails on emails on emails, and it's just all these movements that everybody's doing, and it's super dry and super uninteresting, and there's like no momentum or anything really tying it together. I don't even remember what happens by the end. It's just extremely forgettable. And the builds, though, I guess that's kind of your HUD, your story kind of stuff. But I should probably talk about these. Some jump in between shit. I guess we could keep talking about the story stuff. So yeah, it's got this like poor kind of like HUD elements in the menus. I don't think any of that's. I guess that's one thing I forgot to mention is the menus in these are always lacking. This is a game series where you spend more than half your time in the menus if you're interested in the building, right? And that you have to go out to sell stuff slowly, and that you can't save a lot of mechs in some of these, or that they don't try to minimize the amount of clicks or maximize the amount of information. Like how much am I gaining from this? How much am I losing from this? Some of them, like, they don't even color code that. They get rid of color coding. Blue is more, red is less. They don't show what you have, so you have to like leave the menus and go compare and then memorize what they have, and then you go back and you see how much you're losing, and like just fucking they should have that figured out, and they still don't at this point, if I remember correctly. I mean, at some points they it's fine. I think Last Ravens was fine. Obviously, so later in the series it's good, but like it was a lot of time and quality of life that in a series that lives and breathes in its menus. That's why I'm talking about it, because it is important. That it just should never have been a problem. So, the menu work. Sometimes they looked good, but usually they functionally were not. They're not horrible, but like they could have been a lot smoother. hell, I mean, even in 4 and like 5, it's like half the time you can't even tell what's going on. Like they needed sub menus for like certain types of legs and parts forever, and they only finally add them in 5. But then they like visually are a cluster, and they don't even show you you're in a sub menu half the time. So until you like, you're sometimes confused. You're like, well, where's this weapon? Where's that weapon? Like, oh wait, I'm in a sub menu, but like not all of them have sub menus, and it just ends up a mess. Like 4's menus like hidden away. The shop is almost. It looks like it's just goofy. Which 4 is not as big a deal because I feel like you barely want to fucking build shit. But yeah, so it's kind of a weird thing that the shop's kind of shitty. Or not the shop, but the menus are kind of iffy in some of these. I feel like the conveyance of information clearly, quickly, is super important, and they don't always do that. So. Point is, Nexus has a kind of slow to move through menus because of the mouse interface you have to do on the front end. The setup to the story, I don't even remember. I mean, it's in the same world, but it's just I barely fucking. I honestly I barely remember what the story is. It probably has like the most text out of like anything pre-6. Well, Last Raven has a lot of lore, but like, and it's just so dry. It's so forgettable and so dry, just told through these emails with no voice, no characters, no anything on this dull world where there's no like setup. Like what's going on in Nexus? I don't know. They're just fighting. This company's fighting, which is like the old games, but they were novel and more focused. Nexus is just, well, the companies are just fighting. And like, okay. And then it's just, all the emails are just these little things the companies are always doing, fighting each other, and they're not really like going anywhere, like anything's like really moving or happening. And it's funny because like Armored Cores don't have good story. But Jesus, dude, you're missing the story, man, after Nexus. So Armored Core, the story isn't that important in the first place. So when I focus on the story like this, it's not that I think it's the most important thing, it's just that it happens to be in this case. An odd, super low point, even compared to the other ones. But I do think it's important because that kind of like role playing, that like feeling of being like a mercenary or making your Mac and kicking some ass, right? Being in that world like is kind of informed by at least the setup to the stories, right? Like what is this world I'm in? You know, what are the stakes, if there is any? You know, who am I fighting with or for? And you know, it doesn't have to go anywhere after that, but it does kind of flavor your choices and the feel of the missions and stuff, right? If it didn't matter, well then we could just sit in a fucking white plane with no textures and no text and no people talking, and it should just be the same, right? It does matter. It fucking matters a bit, right? Even if it's just aesthetics and atmosphere. So at least having that initial setup like some of the good ones do would be nice, but Nexus doesn't have that, and then it has just bogged down all these just dull emails with that were much more interesting, told through briefings and post mission communications and stuff. So that sucks. Cooling sucks. I didn't have as much problem with it as most people did, because I think with quads it just doesn't really matter. I'm not using that much energy or anything. And I figured out my radiator stuff pretty quickly. I didn't really run into that many heat problems, but it did kind of, you know, kind of push me down some paths that maybe I would normally go to. I think maybe on lighter mechs it's a problem. So the thing is with cooling in this game is like, if you make the mech wrong, you could just like jump and then overheat, and then you're like draining your energy, which means you're getting your ass destroyed. And it just feels like maybe they're trying to, since now you have dual stick controls, try to like make something else a problem so that you don't have like It doesn't maybe remove too much of that deliberate movement or something. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe they didn't want it to be too easy or some shit, or maybe they thought that cooling was always something you just ignored because it was. It's not even in a lot of the later games. I think it was never really that good, but I don't know what they're thinking because they immediately run it back and do something different later. So that wasn't that great. Obviously, your FCS are smaller because you have twin stick in this, which I don't think is a big problem. But it does kind of change a little bit of the feel of what a quality FCS or you know, speed of movement and shit is, how much turning matters and all that. Not really problems. I guess mission design. God, dude. Just forgettable, man. I mean, that's my thing with Nexus is like, I just played it like a week or two ago. And I felt like I've already forgotten the whole fucking game, man. It just is, I don't think it's a leap forward in any kind of mission design. It's still pretty safe, just kind of dull missions. Maybe focus too much on helmet gimmicks and stuff. I think that was the Nexus that had that problem. It just doesn't do anything crazy. It just feels kind of like Another Age, but better. Bare bones story and setup. Oh, okay. There was some things about Nexus I did want to bring up. Music. Some people say Nexus has some of the best music in the series. It is good music. I think it's some of the worst fitting music though. I think Nexus feels like you're just having like a fun old time. It's always bright. It's like, yeah, it's like post-apocalyptic, but like you're so disconnected from what's going on in the story because it's told so dryly. The music's all kind of like almost like fun. It feels like it's like trying to make it feel like it's fun being in this world or something. And like that's not clearly what they're going for, but like at times some of the music, the upbeat nature of it, some of the garage stuff and the HUD, the main menu, it's just like it just does not fit the world of Armored Core, and especially the world that's supposed to still be in the 3 line. So while the music's like good, it's not fitting. I think 3 was much more fitting. And the older ones were at least just not like bad or anything. Funny enough, Last Ravens is fitting. So it's sick. People don't like Last Ravens music, but I think it's some of the most fitting music because it is very, the tone matches it. I think everything, all the tonal stuff in that game really synergizes with what's going on in the act. And yeah, Nexus is just, it feels like one of those, we need to make some more money, we need to keep the lights on, we're gonna give it a little bit of a try, you know, we're not gonna do Another Age again. We're gonna change some stuff. We're gonna change the balance of cooling, so you have to think about that. We're gonna add twin stick. And then here's a bunch of missions, and it just doesn't, it's kind of it's a lower point, but as we will see, it can go lower. So. 9 breaker. Is there anything else to say on Nexus? I feel kind of bad on that one. I feel like that has been memory hold for me. Oh, also the cutscenes. I forgot to mention the cutscenes. Well, I did mention them, but I didn't say why. It feels like you're like playing with little toys, man. Like the scale is like, it's not borked, but so instead of these like, I think it's this one. It might have been. I don't think it was Armored Core. I'm pretty sure it's Nexus. Since it's daytime and you can see everything like clearly in a lot of situations, instead of the debriefings and stuff, they have these little like cutscenes where they're like little fights are happening, kind of like in the opening cinematics, which are all really cool for every Armored Core. Those are well, some of them don't really have them, but like when they are, they're awesome. Watch all the CG cinematics for these; they're really cool. Well, the openings. There's some CG cinematics in like Armored Core 1 and shit, but they're more goofy. Like that old CG Resident Evil shit. But no, in Nexus, it's like, it's all the models kind of doing these little fights and shit, and it looks like it's little toys, man. Like, it does not feel like these big mechs doing these crazy things. I don't know if it's the speed of the animation, the scale, the detail, which none of these games are really like probably top class in visuals when they came out. Now, if you go back and read any like old reviews at the time, I mean, they usually got knocked for that. I think they can nail atmosphere and like color and stuff like that at times, but they're not like, the fidelity of them are not really that good, and the how complicated the geometry and kinds of things you'll be doing in them. You know, this is a series that had like, you know, PS2 had like, I don't know, what's a good looking PS2 game? I don't love the old God of Wars, but like, think about those, right? You know, just, you know, crazy shit going on, and it still holds up really well. And, you know, then you look at like an Armored Core game, and it's like, yeah, you know, they don't feel like super cheap dog shit, but like, you know, they're not pushing it. So you see that kind of fidelity in these cutscenes with like more of a daytime aesthetic, and something where you're not even connected in any way to really what's going on in the stories. And there's been no debriefing, and like the animations are just kind of, and it just feels like, maybe I was the only one who thought this. It might not be true, but it feels like they're just like little toys moving around and fighting, and it's like they're just supposed to be these like building-sized mechs. It just, you could tell it was them making, like, I can respect it. They want to do these in-engine cutscenes to add a little flavor to the beginning of these missions, but they just look like shit. It doesn't help that in most cutscenes you're like hired for a mission to protect the place, and it's just your guys standing there watching it getting destroyed just cause they just have the guy there. Like, hey, you need to protect this place, and like half of it's destroyed, and you're just standing there watching. It's like the flow and like the cinematography of the cutscenes and all that are just not good. And for what? Why even bother? I mean, you cut the debriefings, you cut the flow, the story, and all that, and a lot of the atmosphere. And it's just like, for what, right? For these like toy cutscenes. Otherwise, yeah, like I said, gameplay. I mean, it's essentially Armored Core 3 stuff, but with twin stick, worse balance, and more forgettable level design. I don't know. That's it on Nexus. There's probably more to say. There's probably more to say on a lot of these, but oh well. I would normally say during these, if you guys got something you want to say, if you want to discuss, feel free to jump in anytime. But I don't think anybody's played all these fucking games. I mean, of course somebody's played them all. People do to your list of this, but there's just not a lot of, we're not going to get a lot of discussion. You played them? Only 6 is good. That's my... Okay, I should get a light so you can see the little eyeballs I'm doing here. I would say Armored Core 3 is good. Just good. Ninebreaker? God, man. I mean, is it worse than Another Age? Probably not. But is it a just... This is what I mean, where questionable ideas bad. Not it is just bad on a like play level. That's Armored Core 5. But bad, why? Like, so Ninebreaker, if you don't know, is essentially, instead of a story, instead of fighting for corporations on all these different areas and different missions out in this bleak world, you are just in a training place, and you just do different categorized training rooms. This is the platforming training. This is the speed training. This is the aim training. This is the heat training, the dodge missiles training. I don't remember how many others there were. Doesn't matter. And that's it. That's the fucking game. And it's just like, that's a fine side mode. If these games had an entire mode like that to help you learn, you know, what each mech could do. Oh, there's mechs that can make it through this speed challenge, and they gave you all the parts, and they had really nice menus where like you could make them all, or maybe they'd get you a setup like, hey, this is a mech that could work for this, but you're not gonna get the gold, so you're gonna have to play with your own mech to They're like, but here's the idea of it, and then maybe the later challenges you have to do it from scratch. Maybe they give you parts to work with, and you have to like make decisions, and then you give all the parts by the end, and you have to fully figure it out. Like a cool, just like side training mode that could be like almost a whole little side game inside of another game. Could have been in Nexus, right? But it's not. It's its own game, and it's just kind of like, I don't know what they charged for Ninebreaker on release. If it was anything more than $20, it's probably not worth it. But even that, the challenges themselves that they did ask you to finally just like min-max and completely make a mech for really specific things, because you don't really get that in the series at all. Because, I mean, it would fuck with the progression, it would fuck with the flow, it's kind of at odds with the money systems and all that. That's with stories and shit, it's really it's way more niche than just making a single mech, right? God, now I have to make a million mechs. Like, you really have to be into the build. But like, it's kind of cool that you will have to do that, right? Like it is. So if you want that aspect of Armored Core, there you go. But it's like, that's all it is, man. It feels like it could be a great training thing or like a side thing to another game, but instead it's its own title. And that's it, dude. There's an arena. Yeah, great. They all have a fucking arena. I mean, Nexus arena doesn't even lock till after you're done, and it's not like the best, but like, okay, an arena, great, yeah, with some crappy AI, probably that's just fucking goofing off. I don't remember if you could pick the environment. Like, it's just like, I just doesn't, I'm looking for a little bit more structure, a little bit more to each AC fight than just, let's just fight 30 in a row. I mean, that just kind of got old after playing a bazillion of them. Like, I like fighting the ACs as you go through the series, but like, that is not a selling point for the game, right? And Ninebreaker supposed to have one of the best arenas. You go through the whole thing, just didn't care enough. So yeah, the biggest thing though, I would say the biggest actual problem that like keeps it down here, because like I said, the concept of it isn't great as a standalone title, but like the idea of the missions could work in another game. But the real problem is, I don't know, I didn't get to do enough research to find out if it was just like something I did, but like, you have no parts. I converted from Nexus, because you can convert from 3 to Silent Lion, and then it restarts with Nexus, Ninebreaker, and then Last Raven. And I only had the parts from Nexus. Oh, I didn't mention that Nexus either. Shit, let me go back. I did not do this too. That is supposed to be considered some of the best Nexus stuff. And I think, I don't know if I regret it. I wouldn't say I do. Because so what this too is, it's a remake of a few missions from the old games, but with like new stuff going on in them, or just like them, but with like the new mechanics and stuff. Thing is, I had just played like 7 of these, and we have a lot of games coming out, and I'm just like, all right, man, I really don't need to replay these. I get the idea. Maybe I'd have a higher opinion of Nexus if I played that version or that extra bit, but I really don't think so. They're just remakes of missions, right? So, I did mention that. That is something that apparently that had a little bit more effort put into it than the main game, but oh well. I really don't think it would change much. I don't know. They'd have to be, I don't know, any mission in the old games that if they just remade it with Nexus controls and builds, would just all of a sudden put this above Armored Core 2. But it is something to mention. I bring it up because all of the parts from Nexus you're converting into Ninebreaker. Now, I had a fair few parts because you get a shitload of money in Nexus. I didn't bring that up either. The builds, you just buy whatever. You don't have to think about ammo anymore. You don't have to think about using laser guns or something like the old ones to save on ammo. Or, oh, I better be careful in this mission. I don't want to use the rockets. because I want to save money. That was something cool that was in the old games. I didn't really bring that up in the old games, but that was something kind of interesting. I think it kind of pushed you to do laser guns early too much. I kind of wish that stuff wasn't so expensive, because in the early game, I feel like if you're min-maxing, you're just using lasers, and then you kind of just keep using lasers. But anyways, Nexus just totally gets rid of that. As a full reset point, because like I said, I convert usually in each game, so I only really build hard in the, you know, in 1 and 2 and in 3. So it's a reset point, but you get so much money. That ammo amount, how much you fail the missions, whether you fail the missions, it just doesn't really matter. So if that's something you liked in the old ones, it's kind of gone, and it really doesn't come back. I don't think it comes back. Sure as shit ain't coming back in 6. You know, I don't remember really being a thing in the other ones either. Maybe Last Raven a bit, but yeah, so that's kind of where that dies. It was an interesting thing that I kind of liked in the first gen. I think after that I didn't really care as much. So if you're not going to lean really hard into that mercenary sim kind of like lifestyle where it's like you're barely making ends meet but you need to squeeze out some parts, then I think you should just go with have a shitload of money so you can make a bunch of different builds for a plethora of missions that ask for a lot of different stuff. It never hits that point until maybe 6. They don't ask for a lot in 6. Well, sometimes they do, but you can just do a lot of shit, and the levels just kind of like allow you to do a lot of shit. So that pure build freedom, I think they kind of try to get in Nexus because they gave you so much money, but you're still not really having the mission design that really asks you to have a bunch of different mechs, and it doesn't feel good enough that I really care to just have a lot of mechs. I think you could still only have like 3 anyways. Usually it's just like, okay, here's my hover mech, here's my normal mech. They have paint jobs, you know, that's it. It's cool. So you do get a little bit more of that because of the excess money, but you lose a little something there. Point is, I had a lot of money, which means I had a lot of parts, but I didn't have every part. I did not have the secret parts. I didn't have the just 2 parts. I did not go back and get every alternate mission or every mission I failed out of and just moved on with in Nexus. And I don't know if you can get them in Ninebreaker without converting them. I don't know for sure. In my experience, you know, there's no shop in Ninebreaker. I converted over just like the old games, and I had what I had. And it's like, well, okay, that's not a big problem. That's how the old games were. It's a problem in Ninebreaker because you need to min-max to get scoring and golds and stuff. So I don't know if maybe you just don't convert, if they just give you everything, or what, but yeah, man, just like, imagine just buying Ninebreaker and like, you just could only use the default mech. Like, there's got to be something else. Like, maybe if you don't convert, you just get, you know, like a big plethora of parts. I don't know, because I don't know if you can earn parts. I didn't, maybe there was a way to earn some. I mean, like I said, we just dabbled in all the challenges because I don't even know if you could finish the thing. But that was quite the deal breaker. I was like, man, I don't want to go back to Nexus, a game I thought was super forgettable, and like grind out every part for like some fucking side challenge game with a bunch of training rooms. I'm like, that's not a good that's not a good dilemma to have for sure. So I think that's one of the actual like, really bad things about Ninebreaker. It's not a horrible idea as like as a side mode, or like if that was a disc too to like Last Raven. Okay, you know, that'd be pretty good. But no, it's not. So, or if that was disc to the Nexus, right? They just had all that in there, all that content. That'd be pretty good. Oh, look at all this content you can do. Look at all these builds you can test. Look at all this stuff. It still has the heating thing, I think, as well, from what I tested. So we played it for a few hours, or a couple hours or something. I didn't do everything. I don't 100% all of these. Some of them I went back and did a lot more missions than others, like the old ones. And some of them I did everything, like 6 and all that, but Ninebreaker. I didn't. Just completion. Well, Ninebreaker, I don't. Maybe you can. I actually don't know if you can fully like actually complete Ninebreaker if there's like an end. Maybe there is. And we just fucked that up. I don't know. I don't really care. Like that wasn't too interesting. With the others, we got credits at least. Yeah. So yeah, Ninebreaker. It's mechanically fine. A good like idea as just like a gameplay thing, but it's just not a standalone. Standalone game's worth of ideas. So. Formula Front, I'd put even lower than Ninebreaker. I played the PSP version of Formula Front. I've mentioned how I feel about just doing the arena. This game is just the arena. But you go back to having even less control of your movements because you're using a PS1. Like you get stick movement, but it like auto aims kind of the verticality because you only have one bumper, so it's not two. So it's like it's even worse feeling. So you're getting a downgrade in feel of game. More annoying music, no story, other than it's a big arena that everybody's fighting. It's like a sports thing, kind of how it feels. I mean, it's fun to make mechs and shit. Worst tunes. The shop theme is like actually grating after like 30 minutes. And for what? Just to play arena? Just to like like I mean, you have all the parts right away. You get to make 5 or 6 mechs that are technically your team, but you only have to use one. So it's supposed to be this like you build a mech to counter the guy you're fighting in the arena coming up. Rinse and repeat, try different mechs. But like I said, the menus, the information's not bad, but the sound of them, the look of them, the gameplay, just the concept is just not too interesting. So the big thing is supposed to be the AI. You're supposed to program an AI on your team with a bunch of parameters. You could set it up so that 30 seconds in they'll do this, and you have to unlock these little perks to do that. And then you can set up how aggressive they are and how much they jump and how much they move and all this stuff. And so you're supposed to really, instead of playing it yourself, program an AI to do the fights for you. And man, I just didn't like that at all, man. I don't hate the idea of programming your AI, but like the time it takes to like set that up and like the understanding to figure out like with the other goofy AI the enemy has what you want to do to counter that after having so many of these builds done and like having just like no control over like anything really out there on the field, like like in a way it's cool, like prepping something and building something and seeing it just go is a cool idea, but all of the different parameters, the teaching of it, really seeing it and how seeing how it feels and the counter to that. It's not like you're doing like a puzzle where he needs to go this far forward and then this far right and then shoot at this range. It's like you're just fighting another mech, just jumping around at random and stuff. Like yes, you can like plan out. What's up, Matt? Yeah, we're doing the whole deal here. I'm on Armored Core Formula Front right now, PSP version. So it's like the idea of it's cool, but the delivery of it's so fucking just dry, man. It's just arena fights. It's a lot of tuning, a lot of fooling around. To get a result, but it doesn't feel like super rewarding and like intuitive a lot of the time, because also the question of just like what really is going to work against another armored core is just kind of something you need to just like there's an S and all the others are E. Yep, that's the best right now. It's the highest. These all might change. I'm just setting up. I just do it relatively to each other. I'm just moving around as I feel, without any numbers or ratings or anything, just direct comparisons. It's definitely one of the best ones. But yeah, Formula Front, it's just, once again, could be a cool side mode. Yeah, happy Saturday. But like, as a full game, I just don't think. Although, it's not like the build variety is bad. But like, just, is it build variety? It's just this thing, like, I don't hate the idea of programming an AI and then having it do shit. But like, I don't think they try to make it more fun than it is at like the most base level. It's really just watching essentially two AI just fight each other in a very dry arena with very dry balance, very dry menuing and tuning, and it's like they could make it so that the AI just plays really different. Like, it's a totally different game, right? Not just Armored Core, but like just where it's like more of like a puzzle or more of like a, it would have to be almost a different game, yeah. Like where it could be more fun to just set up these sequences and tune these things, right? Like more obvious counters and shit. But like with Armored Core, it's like it's so, even if you have a mastery of all the systems, so just in the air, what really, like what each little thing's gonna do, and it's just, it's not that fun to like explore and try to tune and figure that out. They don't make it any more fun than it could be at the most base level, is what I'm saying. It's hard to explain. We did finish it. Just it was a goofy finish. I was playing Dead or Alive Extreme Volleyball 2 and just having the game automatically win itself with an AI. That shit stomped it. So you can beat the whole game with an AI. It's at the time I thought maybe you couldn't, like it was just poorly thought out, but you absolutely can. But it's just, that's my thing, is like, you're not, like in that situation, you're not building to counter. You're just building some shit stomper that just can handle anything, and something that like, where it's more snappy building, more interesting sequences, much quicker flow, and situations that are much more readable, where you can actually make all these different things and these different tools and maybe like command them a little bit to do tactics, like team tactics or something, like just more. It's just like asset flip, like Armored Core, where you program the AI a little bit, and it's like, that's neat, but it doesn't do anything above the base level of that, and it's just like, all right, man, that's not a full game to me. That's just not interesting enough on its own. I have a very unpleasant time with it. I mean, I liked playing Dead or Alive. That was kind of fun while it was going in the side of the stream, but no, did not like Formula Front. I don't think a whole lot of people do. I mean, I'm sure there's some people who really enjoyed it, you know, they're younger, on the PSP. The portability of it and the arena of, this was a PS2 game first, by the way. The PSP is in North America. That's the one we played. But I mean, the portability of that one I think would work well. Really, the whole series could work good in like a bite-sized chunk kind of portable format. So I think Formula Front works there. You tune a little bit, you try to beat the guy, it didn't work, you tune it again later, but it's just like something you grind through. It's not fun to play. It's a downgrade from almost all of them to physically play. And then the AI part of it's like, it's just not that, it's just done so dry. It's just such a dull, unengaging way to play Armored Core. I think I was hoping when I read about Formula Front, it was going to be like an entirely like like, oh, it's mechs, but like with a new system, a new engine, a new way of playing that really pushed like, you know, this kind of more top-down, like tactical or, you know, AI controlled kind of style, and it's just the same, but like with AI control. So it was pretty lazy. Anyways, Last Raven. Are they all gonna be just Last Raven's pretty good? What do I think on Last Raven? Now, I didn't do every single route. We did a route. I just rolled with it. I don't know if it was considered the hardest route. I highly doubt it. I think that's some route called the Zendaya. That's a Zendaya. That's that actress. And this game does have a fair bit of routing. But once again, we've been through a lot. We had a lot more to go through. It was decent enough length. So maybe the point is I bring that up because maybe there's a little something I'm missing. But I liked it overall. It had a decent amount of challenge, but it wasn't like overboard. Now I've heard there's some routes that are fucking overboard. I've heard Last Raven is excruciating, and I was like, I didn't feel that, so I must have not picked a crazy enough route. But at that point, I was kind of done with the old gen, so one was enough. But I liked it. I mean, I think they clean up the builds from Nexus. You don't have the heat issues. I think it takes that twin stick feel, but still having the deliberate movement of old gen, and kind of really, you know, gets that kind of perfected almost. Not perfected, but as good as it gets until they just move on, right? It feels like a nice upgrade over like Nexus and stuff. So that feels pretty good. I don't know, is it better than Master Arena? I don't know. They're all, like I said, this is splitting hairs for me. It's crazy. They're all like really close. Well, these won't be. Don't worry. These will be older. But yeah, I would say The Last Raven, definitely a little bit crispier on the gameplay there. It's not a huge departure from like Nexus, but it does clean up the builds, has a lot of nice parts to pick from. Keeps going with the tuning system that came in next. I didn't mention that. You get tuning, but you had to like pay for the tuning and reset the tuning in Nexus, which was kind of annoying. You had enough money, so it wasn't a big deal. Last Raven, it's free, so it's all about kind of tuning your mech and getting it perfect and stuff. For really harder challenges, shit like that. But I think where Last Raven, other than just general mission design, which was pretty good, is really different, is in those like non-gameplay elements. It's the structure, the story, the world building, some of the aesthetic. So Last Raven is 24 hours, and then the anti-corporate force, or the corporations are all like an alliance or something now, right? And so there's this group of ACs who are like some resistance force or something, put out an ultimatum that this thing is going to happen in 24 hours. So the whole game is you essentially picking little routes and missions and stuff as this timer's ticking down. It's not an actual timer, just a narrative timer. And it's going. So each mission, you feel like you're getting closer to this point, and everything you're doing and what you're finding out, and you're getting little pieces of the story, but not the whole thing. It's Miyazaki directed it, so it's got that kind of vibe. I think it was his first one he directed, or was it? No, I don't think he directed. He was just part of it. But anyways, it's just got a cool way of handling the structure, the momentum of having this timer, of having the story move at a quicker pace, with kind of characters that are actually real. Like you know who, like, the leader of the alliance, like armed faction is. The guy who leads the mercenary dudes, the resistance people, and like you get some of the, like, other players, the Zanata chick, with her fucking Xbox Live rage or whatever. She'd send the mail she'd send you and stuff. Like you get a bit more characters, but there's also a bit more just like kind of flow to the events. And I feel like the biggest thing is the atmosphere of that. So the music is much more like chaotic and urgent and not probably something people generally would like, but I'm the kind of guy who likes the Drakengard soundtrack a lot, so it worked really well for me. And it really fit the tone, like where shit's just going, it's chaos, it's like we don't, there's not a lot of time, shit's going on, and that feel, there's like a certain like, not just sinister, but kind of this gravity, not like in an epic chorus kind of way, but like just a style. Like most Armored Core games have some kind of stylishness to them, but in Last Raven, I feel like it really hits a kind of a peak. The HUD, the menus are just really fucking this clean color. The mech in this kind of like sun drenched, like kind of factory thing. Like it just, the music changes in the fucking like assembly area throughout the playthrough and stuff, and it's more and more like grim and like like I said, I want to say sinister. Sinister's not the best, but grim, kind of like it's, there's this feel, this like this thing's gonna happen soon, this ultimatum kind of deal. And it just really fucking nails that feel, man. And it makes the gameplay more fun, even because you're just like you're kind of in it, right? Like, oh yeah, the music's going crazy. I'm this guy. I'm one of the last ravens. Like all the ravens are getting like wiped out for some reason or the other, and you're the only like independent guy really in the game from the go almost. So it's kind of you just bouncing between these factions while they're essentially annihilating all the armored cores, and you're just like, this music's gone, and the visuals are really bumping, and it's actually a really cool world building because it's the first one, and I don't even think they do it again. Maybe they do in Verdict Day. I don't know if they do in the 4s. I didn't care to check, but they have this menu that teaches you every fucking thing, like the people, the armored cores, the factions, events, like some weapons and shit. Like they're lore dumping everything. There's all these menus where you just read it, and it's really interesting and you really get invested, but there's still a lot of mystery to what's going on because they don't tell you like what's gonna happen or stuff like that. You're kind of like getting little kernels of info and a lot of the background, and this is still set in the same world as Armored Core 3, so it has to do with some of that kind of technology and shit. It's just cool, man. It feels cool, it sounds cool, and when the gameplay's not like that drastically different, that makes all the difference on whether or not it's like that much better or not. I don't know, man. Do I put Last Raven above Silent? I almost wanted to. What was Last Raven's issue? I'm thinking like, why would I put it underneath Silent Line? Like I said, I think 3's got obviously a bit more of a fleshed out difficulty, and I like that kind of like how it's leap forward and stuff in the series, and it also has a very clean kind of like atmosphere and stuff. We'll leave it there. It's one of those things where I'm like, those other routes, but they're probably, and I can't speak on them. Just the round I did, it's pretty good. But like, I feel like maybe there's something going on in those other. I don't know how extensive those were, but anyways, yeah. No, I just really I had fun with that one. I don't know. It was enjoyable in my playthrough. Maybe if I 100% of the game, I'd feel different. But pretty good challenge, fun little missions, just great atmosphere and sound. Some of the missions, like the one where you're fucking, was that was in Last Raven. It was Last Raven. Where you have to, like go through the vertical maze where it's like you have to go through all the different areas and then rush back to do the alternate mission. Some of those are a little goofy, but for the most part, I mean, they were pretty cool. You get to see little humans and shoot them, I guess, but it's just kind of interesting. They look really bad. It's not like a huge leap forward in like the fidelity department or anything. It's still very similar, which is why I don't think it's like it sounds like I'm raving about it, but it's not like that much different than 3 or Silent Line. It's twin stick, refined, and then it's got a neat structure and aesthetic, but it's like so did those other ones. Otherwise, it's still running on the same type of thing. So, I don't know. I'll have to come back to Last Raven. I'm not sure. Think about it for a minute. I think just personally, I'm kind of like, no, I really like that. It'd feel wrong to put Armored Core 1. I really liked that deliberate movement. I really liked the feel of upgrading. I liked that kind of like dark atmosphere, that those PS1 visuals and stuff in Armored Core 1. I put it below Master Rain is like the same. Yeah. I don't know. These are all it's splitting hairs for me, honestly. Like this is a pretty hard one to put above any others. They're just in the same tier for me in some capacity, I would say. I think some people find Last Raven one of the worst, probably because it's like ultra hard or something. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't have that problem. Maybe it was the route. If we had infinite time, maybe I'd go back and do a few more. But God, after Armored Core 6, man, I'm gonna be replaying a lot of these, man. I'll tell you what. All right, so Armored Core 4. So when I was going into Armored Core 4, I was like, all right, man. Here we go, dude. This is a big jump. Speed max. I know it's speed max. I'm like, oh, these are the ones people talk about. Like the four answer and shit. You're like, all right, this is cool. This is gonna be where it's gonna feel really different. Maybe not better, necessarily. Maybe better, but different. And it's just like, all right. I was ready for that. I was ready for just something going on. I was like, we're gonna go into a totally new direction, and I could really like it. But yeah, I really didn't like Armored Core 4 that much. I don't know where is it Nexus or is it Armored Core 2 for me? Yeah, Armored Core 4, man. How to explain it? I mean, I probably like it. I like better Armored Core 2, probably. We'll see. Armored Core 4. It brings the speed in. It's not quite as quick as the game after it, but still fairly quick. New kind of visual style, a bit more sun-drenched, simple geometry and stuff. It's neat. It's a neat style. Made for, moving quickly and not completely tanking your console, I guess. It's going to be more simple, but they work that into the style. I find the builds to be boring. I barely wanted to change my build. Everything's fast enough where it's just like, I don't really care to. Like I said, it doesn't have that challenge of the old ones where it's like, oh, I need to make a change. or really that transformative nature of changing out your legs or changing out a part, because it's all just pretty damn fast anyways. Now the problem is it doesn't feel like that good. Like it's fast, but it doesn't feel like super great. So you're getting this kind of like elimination of, in my mind, a lot of what's interesting about the builds. They have a lot of details, right? You can mess with your stability. You can mess with lots of different kinds of tuning and stuff, but it just feels very unnecessary and not very, it doesn't react in as big a way as you'd hope with each piece change and all that. I mean, sure, your weapons and stuff make a bit more of a difference, but it's all generally pretty fast no matter what you do. So that's not necessarily bad, right? Then it's kind of more just an action game. But the problem is, I don't feel like the controls and the feel of the action, and especially the mission design, really just utilize any of it. Or I shouldn't say utilize. Let me break it down, I guess, into each thing, right? So gameplay wise, I don't think it's so smooth and so fast and reactive and stuff that on its own it just feels insanely great, right? You know, that's not, maybe that's not entirely true. It feels like it could be fine. I would blame it more on the mission. So you're getting these fast mechs in these missions that are very dull, either hallways or simple like fights in like just kind of boring areas, or where you don't really have to do anything involving the speed. Like you might have to like travel far, but it doesn't feel like this moving around and dodging and all that is just really necessary. Like the fights don't require a lot of it. Maybe the last one, because he's boosting around like crazy, but like it's generally like you're just moving quick in a world that doesn't really need you. That doesn't feel like it's made perfectly for that in mind. It's not like it's just fucked or something, right? It's not like you're running around Armored Core 1 with a mech that can just dash everywhere and destroying everything. It just doesn't, it feels like, okay, we made the mechs a little quicker, and then they didn't have a good feel of how we were going to make the level design and enemy design work with that. Enemies are like really tanky, so you're moving around really quickly, and then you're just kind of shooting them for a while, and they don't really move, and there's not a whole lot of crazy geometry to like, you know, think about all these like fast moving tactics and stuff around, and a lot of gimmicks, bosses and stuff that aren't like terribly interesting, that don't really play super duper well. No. It's a hard one for me. It sounds like I just don't have any idea of what I think on it, but it's weird because For Answer is like way fucking better, but like they're still kind of similar. It's much more nuanced in the control side of things. Maybe not super nuanced, but and then a big change in level design. I would say level design, definitely the momentum and story of 4 is fucking bad. It's just some fucker talking over a PowerPoint pretentiously about these people who came from this town to make money to help their town or whatever, and they're doing corporate things, and it's talking about the Kojima particles and all these. It feels very just like what's it, proper noun? what do I want to call it? Where they are just telling you about all of these different terms and all these different people, and they just make it sound cool, like, oh, the Kojima particles and this group and that group and this guy, and they never really explain what a lot of that is or why you should care or make you feel anything. It's just this like almost like it's trying to sound like tactical or just interesting, right? Because it has all of these like names and places and this, what do they call it? The globity gluke? What is it called? Of just like kind of, is that the word I'm looking for? Learning English right now. Maybe it's not English. Gobbledygook. Yeah, language is meaningless or is made unintelligible, excessive use of abstruse technical terms. It's kind of like that a little bit, where they just kind of throw all this crap at you, and you're just supposed to be interested because there's this like some cool voice actor talking over it all, and they've got some slick PowerPoint in the background, but it's like, and it's really character focused. It's all about, you know, the empathy of like, you know, this person and that person, and it's a third person guy talking about, he's in the story, but like he's talking about you and your operator as characters in a past tense way with a bunch of gobbledygook bullshit going on, and it just doesn't work at all. It's extremely dry. So you have nothing story-wise you're interested in this game. None. The atmosphere is really not that clean. It's like I said, it's got a style, but it's not ultra refined, especially coming after Last Raven. So then it's on the gameplay, and like I said, it moves fast, but there's just not much that really takes control or takes advantage of that movement, man. The fights just don't really, the tankiness of a lot of the enemies and how much you have to like stop to take out some of these dudes just doesn't really bode well with like the momentum. It doesn't really flow well with the momentum. I shouldn't say bode. So it just feels like it's a failing. It's not like the gameplay is like ultra awesome feeling, but it's fine. But it's just a failing on level design and enemy design and stuff. I think it's a great example of that. Why that matters a lot, right? Like you can make something feel really good or something decent, and like that can carry, I guess, right? I mean, you can take like Devil May Cry, right? Level design and enemy design doesn't really matter in that, but it feels so good to do anything. You'll just beat on one guy forever, and it's awesome. And Devil May Cry like 5. But this game, I don't think it's so good or that there's that much depth to just the general moving around and fighting that it can make up for just what's just pretty just weak ass level design. It's just not interesting at all. I don't know, man. Did I like Armored Core 2 better? Jesus. I mean, Armored Core 2 is kind of disappointing, but so it's fine. They're in the same category. Shit, man, I don't know. Armored Core 4 is almost Nexus tier for me, man. It's kind of controversial. I don't think people hate Armored Core 4 though. It's got some cool music, but once again, I don't find it very fitting. 4 Answer is much better about it. It's just like the shop assembly theme in Armored Core 4 is like this fucking Americana, like rockabilly. Like I feel like I was playing God Hand. And I was like, what is this? This doesn't make me feel like I'm in some dystopian or post-apocalyptic corporate-controlled world, or that I'm gonna go out and fight with mechs. It feels like I'm like maybe if I was getting ready to do like a custom robo match or something like. So just like some of the music was good, and it has like some great like credits and stuff like that. You know, there are good songs that have been. A lot of the time, it just wasn't very fitting, which in part is probably because it didn't really have like a feel. Because there wasn't really a story or momentum, or I mean, even the menus just feel really fucking shitty. I mean, goddamn, I didn't even know where the shop was half the time, or for a few minutes there, it's like hidden away. So that kind of sucked. It's not just like bad or anything. It's just, it feels like they're trying to, and I respect that they're trying to evolve it or change it. It's not technically an evolution for some people. But it fails in way too many ways. Not dog shit or anything, but I found the other ones to have just a more compelling either builds or level design. So like an Armored Core like 3, Last Raven, you know, you're getting more interesting build, you're getting more interesting like, you know, atmospheres, and you know, the original games you're getting much more interesting like progression of builds, right? Like the money, the play of that mercenary, the scale and all of it, the weight of old gen and stuff. While it was not always great, it felt the deliberate feel felt like something they really nailed and then really kind of like try to work through. Or in Armored Core 4, it doesn't nail the speed at the start. And while there's bad missions in these old ones, like there's some really good stuff too. In Armored Core 4, there's really not much. It's also not too long. Like if probably Phantasma length. I mean, it took me like what, like 4 or 5 hours or something. But there's just not much there. If you're not gonna let me care about the builds really, if I'm not gonna find them interesting to mess around with, at least have the action gameplay be really crispy and interesting, in places that are really awesome with some kind of structure or story or something that I care about, which is what our answer does. Yeah. I think for answer I like better than all of those. Why are you putting in others? Why is there two? You'll find. We'll find out. But anyways, yeah, I think for answer is a huge improvement over Armored Core 4. Some of these I might have to swap. I don't know, man. It's fine for now. Yeah, Armored Core 4. Big gap between that and for answer. Leagues. So not only does for answer have refined gameplay, the boosts go farther. You can do them quicker. They feel snappier. You can do them for longer. The general speed is faster. On top of all that, where you use them, what you use them against, the situations you use them in are way better. Giant, huge max, crazy set pieces, super fights where you are flying around them, dodging crazy shit, taking out all sorts of turrets and other robots and stuff, and needing to move big distances. Things where you have like bazillions of rockets on your back, where you're just flying into these giant, fights, dodging, huge laser shots as you're coming in, and fucking AC fights I actually finally liked, man. Like, there was some I liked, like in Silent Lion, I liked the one with the two guys where you're fighting them with the pillars, and it's kind of remind me like the Matrix or something. And like there's like really cool ones here and there, where they'll make use of like locations and all that. But this one was just like you could just throw me anywhere in Armored Core 4 answer. Now, like I generally like fighting the Armored Cores because it just had like really good feeling gameplay. They were fast, you were fast, the environments are exploding around you. You had your strategies and stuff with weapons and all that, which was really cool. I mean, it felt fun to fight them. It could get a little goofy, I think, sometimes. Stuff like White Glint, where it's just like they're just zipping around. And I think this ends up being kind of a problem with Armored Core 4 answer by the end of it, where like it gets a little one note. But it's cool for a while, and it's cool when it's not so fast that it just doesn't matter anymore what's going on. You're just kind of like waiting around, or you're just dodging back and forth just kind of with them, and it just kind of gets samey. But when it's like you're dodging and you're keeping up, but then you're also using like cover, just moving around, like some of those early like arena battles are really fun. But yeah, really a lot of the big set pieces, like, or just like these bombing run missions, like where you're flying around through a bunch of battleships, blowing them all up, and they all die pretty quickly. Like the robots die quickly, but there's just a lot of them, and then there's harder fights later, and fights you have to think about, your approach to areas, because there's like stealth snipers or something. And there's just all sorts of stuff. The level design is much more interesting. The destruction's better. The power fantasy's better. The speed and everything just feels better. And the enemies you fight answer to that. Or if they aren't as quick as you, they're at least something that you're going to just blow up quickly on the run while you're speeding towards something else. And it just feels cool, man. It just feels really cool and pretty good. So also the story and stuff, the branching paths and all that is cool. The alternate endings and such are neat. You fight a lot of different big shit, which is kind of cool. And either of the, and there's 3 total. We just did the one, but I went and watched the others later when my free time. So that kind of shit was neat. The builds, I didn't really care about the builds again. It's one of those where I tuned it a bit, but once again, you're just kind of going so fucking quick that outside your weapons and stuff, it just didn't feel like it was a big deal. It's so fast, and everything has such a standard of speed that because the gameplay is mostly just like spam and dodge back and forth when you're fighting other ACs, which is really what you're building for, because otherwise anything could handle whatever from there. It just doesn't really matter after that. I think it's one of the problems with the 4s for me in general is I didn't care about building almost at all. And I spent an absurd amount of time thinking about build in like 6 and in the old gens, or at least at the beginning of the old gens. So it's not a lack of interest. It's just a lack of desire, a lack of seeing any appreciable like kind of changes. Those are not as interesting. And we're 4, that really sucks because there's not much else for it to fall back on. Or Answer, I don't really give a shit because it's just so fun to play that I just don't give a fuck. It's pretty much a character action game at that point. So. It can rise above that problem, the build problem. I do think that kind of means it's missing a little something. I mean, there is still a shitload of parts. There is still parts. There is still build customization. It's still better than any other mech game that's going to do that, because no other mech game really bothers to do that. So hardly. So I mean, it's still good there. It's still Armored Core there, but comparatively, it's not as much. So. But yeah, just the feel of it. I mean, the missions you go on, the branching paths, and a bit more character work and stuff, and stories. More neat. The art design, the music really meshes with what's going on. It's a lot more melancholic. The piano kind of key, like where it feels like there's some kind of like melancholic. It's like it's almost sad. It's not like sappy sad. It's got this like high energy kind of like feel, and it kind of fits like this desolate world where and they set it up good too, where it's just all of the humanities in a bunch of giant planes above, near the outside of the atmosphere, or almost out of the atmosphere, because everything below is fucked. And so it just kind of has this vibe that kind of sells you on that, because everybody on the surface is fighting and shit, and the companies. It's just cool, and it's this big question of what we should do about that kind of situation, or where it's mercenaries fighting companies and freedom fighters fighting all of them, and all that kind of stuff that a lot of the old Armored Core games did, but they try to add a little bit more story to it. It's not like super long. It is just, I mean, it's like 2.5 routes. But it's cool. It's well paced, big set pieces all the time, big bosses, cool AC fights, cool destructible environments, cool power trip. It just feels pretty good. Like I said, I think by the end of it, your 4 to 5 hour journey, some of the feel, like if you play a lot of action games, it's not that great. Like it's not like I'm playing Bayonetta or something, right? Like where it's just like feels really good, but there's a lot of resistance too. Like it's really fast, and it does feel good compared to all these, and I'd say in general it still feels good. But a lot of the time it's just zipping back and forth a little too much, I feel like, or it gets a little samey. And there's not really much mix up to that. How you play certain guns, I mean, because you're so fast and stuff, not gonna like, I mean, you'll use cover a bit and stuff, but you're not gonna be like, sniping some dude from far away carefully, or, doing some goofy, you know, bazooka launch at someone, because it's like everybody's just zipping really quickly. So it's like I'm just high projectile speed, you know, full auto, stuff like that, right? Like it's like you could do swords and stuff, which is really cool. I mean, I like that kind of stuff. The homing with swords. Swords were OP in 4. They just shot on everything. They're too strong. I just walked up and just spammed sword on every objective and just destroyed it. And they're still good in 4 answer, but when you're fighting other ACs and stuff, it gets a little samey. I think it's really fun to fight ACs for a while, but once it starts getting into the white glint type of territory, where it is just zipping back and forth, I think it starts to, you start to kind of get used to it a little too much. I think a bit more variety, the feel of using the stage, how much you can really zip, how much the enemies are gonna zip, and whether that means you need to fight more enemies at once so that you can have like still the challenge with different speeds. Armored Core 6 does it to the level I'd like. I feel like 4 answer goes a little too hard on it, but it still feels really cool. The music popping, the speed still, it still is fun for the whole playthrough. I just don't think like the depth is like that crazy up on it. Like I think it gets a little samey just for a campaign run. I'm sure PvP. I mean, every game's got a shitload of depth because of PvP, right? There's all sorts of ways when you verse other actual people that systems that maybe the devs don't even intend for are going to change. So on that front, I think yeah, it's pretty good. I would say it's solid overall. I would say it is a good game. It was one I actually like. You know, I had fun and I enjoyed my time with the ones before. I'd say this one I was actually like looking forward to coming. I was like, oh yeah, it'll be cool to play these other ones some more. They're entertaining. But that one I was like, this one's actually like I think by the very end, my opinion drops a little bit on it because of the sameness of some of it. But the improvement in mission design and just the feel, and they really evolve it from Armored Core 4 to 4 answer. It's really good. Definitely the best. Like as far as the little half upgrades go, it is like the most, like the generational upgrades. It's the most clean. Like, well, no, 5's probably got the biggest upgrade. The 5s are worse in general, but like the jump from 5 to Verdict is pretty quick. Just because 5 is really bad, not because Verdict Day is like that good. Anyways, yeah, I think that's where I'm at with it. I would say, yeah, definitely a very different vibe, very different atmosphere from the tone than the stuff that came before it, but it's still working with the same kind of cards with the corporations and dystopias and stuff. But it's a cool evolution. It's a cool change, and I like that about it. And I think by the time you get to 4 answer, they really nailed something for the most part. So. Anyways, 5. Is 5 the worst? So this is kind of what I was talking about in the beginning when I was talking about Another Age. There's games that are bad in this series or that are low tier in the series because they are a bad idea or concept. Like Ninebreaker. That's a standalone title. Ninebreaker's not a bad concept as like an extra mode. It's not working with a bad set of gameplay. It's pretty clean on that front. And the activities are fun. It's just not really what you'd want for like a whole standalone game. It's more like a little DLC, and then obviously the part stuff is an actual problem. Like Another Age is like, well, it's working on Armored Core 2's gameplay, which is just a slightly refined version of Armored Core 1 and those games. So it's like, if I like those, I should like that. well, it's just got bad missions. So it's like it's got good things going on, but it's got some kind of part of it that's just like bad. So that has like bad like mission design or structure. Ninebreakers and Formula Front are like a bad like kind of idea, or like a standalone game almost. Not a bad idea. You could make them work in a full thing. I would say Formula Front's got a better idea as a standalone game, but with pretty shoddy execution. And I feel like 5's kind of in that camp. It's just actual fucking like quality, like the look, the sound, the feel, the mission design, the like just the execution is just like poor, right? Like you'd look at Another Age and you'd be like, it looks alright. You know, you play it for, you watch it for 5 minutes, you're like, okay. You know, if you're not just totally against old stuff. Same with Ninebreaker if you didn't know, but like you just look at Armored Core 5 and it looks bad. Like it looks like something's wrong. Not because it's just ugly, but like it's just like like actually it's weird to say like some of these are like conceptually bad or like bad because of something, where Armored Core 5 is just like the quality is just fucking low, man. Like, so yeah, Armored Core 5 is the multiplayer focused co-op one. Obviously, I didn't get to play the multiplayer. They shut the servers down 2 years after the fucking thing came out. I'm playing it now like 10 years later or something. I played it last week, but just a unpleasant experience, man. The visual, you don't really appreciate the visual clarity and the look of all the old ones until 5. You can, they try to add so much detail to everything that the visual noise, the clutter, just the color work and all of that stuff makes it so hard to pick out what you're doing. The sound is like grating, it's mixed bad, it's like loud, or just like annoying at times. Like fucking story is atrocious. It is like comedy hijinks at times where they're trying to get you to like this lovable cast of like anti-establishment characters. It feels like, I've mentioned a few times, like the script was ran through like a machine translation like 5 times and then someone touched it up. It just feels unnatural. Like a fucking alien wrote it. They do not sound like people. They do not sound like they're doing real things, but the voice actors are like trying, I guess. It's not like bad voice acting, I suppose. Some of it is, but it's just like the worst material. And that's like constant. It's constant chatter, constant visual noise where you can barely tell what's going on. Horrible HUD where like it's just this big circle, which they have a circle thing in 6, but it's a little bit more clean and useful. Maybe not as useful, still pretty useful. But like in 5, it's just this big nasty thing where they have too many, ooh, look at all these cool elements on it, right? And you're constantly swapping between that and a scan mode, which has all of these little things popping up everywhere when it's already way too busy. And on top of that, they have like a blue filter when you put on the scan mode. And in the normal game, it's got a bunch of like filters and like, you know, ash and shit flying around and your guns, and it runs like shit. And it's just like, what were they fucking thinking? So like, it's just an atrocious game to look at, which affects the gameplay in a huge way because just being able to read like what's going on. Where is this guy? Where is that guy? Well, how am I gonna get there? It just does not feel good. And on top of that, just the feel of the game too. It goes back to being slower, but almost too much. Like it still has a little bit of boosting around, but the idea is you're supposed to be like mantling up stuff or using like cover and shit a bit more, which like you kind of do, but because everything's just so like stiff feeling and feels like such junk, and because it was kind of designed with more multiplayer in mind, it just in the way it just reads and the flow of the movement and stuff, it just is so nasty that like it's just not a good time. Anyways, yeah, there's just so much like just bad about it. There's not that many missions. They're all really long, which usually the games, one of the pros of them is they have really short but like snappy kind of missions. I don't hate the idea of a longer mission, but you got to make it worth it. Where in this, so you, I mean, because you have to think about ammo and all that kind of balance in the old ones. And this one is just like you just keep stopping at garages and like backtracking the garages to like get health and all that. So it's like it's slow on that front. They introduced the weapon type system, which they kind of had in the past, like energy and all that. But this one, it matters way more. Because if you don't use the right type of weapon on a guy, you do like way less damage. So it's like if you're not using the right thing, it's like a slog and it takes forever. And the effective range is like really short in the game. And it's just every map is like really wide and open, and it's not necessarily bad, but just I don't know, the level design, the fights, the gimmicks, the fucking constant goofy chatter, the how unreadable it is. So the game was so slow and so stiff that I was like, all right, this is the first time I'm gonna go full treads, and I just went treads with autocannons, and I just ignored the ineffective weapon system and just went all full auto, just stood still and shot everything. And I actually had more fun with that than doing it the other way. It was just that fucked. So yeah, the sound, like I said, was kind of fucked. The soundtrack, it's going, the whole game I would say in general is going for more of this. I should probably take a break here, honestly. Fucking going. I would say the whole game is going for this like kind of dude bro Call of Duty era, like 360, 2010s esque vibe, right? Not 2010s. Yeah, 2010s. Yeah, that's when it came out. But around that era, the Gears of War, that kind of time period. Like I said, it's very like, gritty, military with like, the fun characters and multiplayer and co-op and it just doesn't, man. Like I said, story-wise too, like outside of just those characters, like I barely understood who the factions were or why you're fighting against some police or some police state company, and like the leader of that gets killed off screen, and half your friends are killed off screen, and like it just doesn't mean anything, man. At the end of the day, it's all just kind of dog shit. I mean, fighting always in these same areas where you're constantly swapping between scanning and not scanning, so you could like boost, and because when you scan, you get your energy back quicker. But I don't even scan enemies to look at them because like it's a pain in the ass to just have like, I mean, it limits your builds too. Like, oh, I gotta have one of every weapon type or every damage type. I was like, I don't care. I just shoot them at the end of the day with the auto can't ignore it, man. The menus, I didn't like the menus, like I mentioned earlier. The sub menus, it's fun. I love that they finally have sub menus, but the color, the icons, that you don't even know you're in a sub menu half the time, because they don't show you the fucking like parent menu. I just didn't even understand it at some points, and even to the end, because some menus don't have sub menus. It just was like, what? The buy and the sell and the assembly menus are all like almost identical. It's just poorly thought out in almost every way, man. I don't know. Maybe I like it more. I mean, okay. I probably like it more than Formula Front. I didn't care about Formula Front at all, but it's pretty bad. I mean, as far as just like the quality, man, of everything. Like I said, from the visuals to the readability to the feel of the gameplay, it's just story. I don't know, maybe in the multiplayer it's more interesting. It's only like 9 missions too, but they're like really long missions, and some of them will reuse the same areas over and over, or reuse like within that area, like copy paste like the same sewer areas over and over, like back to back to back. And it's just like, so you're not even fighting fun objectives. You're fighting these like big machines sometimes, but you're fighting them like multiple times. And after 4 Answer, where the visual clarity is there, there's way more mission variety, a much more intelligible story. Maybe not really a whole lot of build stuff going on, but like, you know, fun gameplay. To go to 5 was just, oh man, bad news for sure. Yeah, as far as the gameplay goes too, I guess I didn't talk about all of that as much. The idea of the mantling up buildings and stuff is cool, but the jumping off shit, but everything's so poorly readable that moving really quickly and seeing what you're doing and reacting feels so bad and so hard to do that I just found it safer to just be a tank, because like I couldn't read what was going on, and you weren't gonna be able to react that well because like the readability and the performance and all that stuff was just so shit that it was just like, I'm just not gonna bother, especially if I need to like scan and see what they got. Like, I'm just gonna tank, and I mean it worked. They try to throw in like a goofy boss at the end where you actually have to like dodge them and stuff. Cool. I mean, in a tank, I didn't give a fuck because I could barely dodge, but I mean, I didn't care what was going on. It was more just annoying at that point. I mean, you're just trying to be done. Yeah, so for 5, definitely the worst numbered entry. Oh, I feel like I need to take a little break. I'm like ran. I don't think the flow of some of these rants is all that great. I'm jumping between 20 different points in a row because I'm like, oh, this and that and this. I think in the future when I do these tier lists, I'm gonna like write out like a few more things about it. I like to do it on the spot, and if there's conversation, we'll let that kind of dictate the flow. But the thing with Armored Core is there is such much nuance between them because they don't change insanely large in a big way, or like just the simple feel of the mechs and stuff, which is harder to kind of like articulate in like a really strong way. Since all that's such a big deal, it's just kind of like when you get ranting and talking for too long. I'm surprised I've been talking this long. I feel like these get lost in the sauce, man. Especially with a game like Armored Core 5, where it's like just everything's wrong with it. I mean, conceptually, a multiplayer Armored Core like co-op isn't like horrible. I think even the 4 Answer had some kind of co-op or some missions, but it just doesn't work out in 5, man. Not only does the speed and the size of the levels and the length of the levels and the checkpoints and stuff those are kind of dictated by multiplayer, because like you can't really have like a super short mission with a bunch of guys running down a hallway for 6 minutes, with speed max, right? And multiplayer, like, so I mean, all of that kind of has to revolve around that, but just the execution's just so bad. Maybe the multiplayer in Verdict Day was better there, but the single player experience is much better. So. Anyway, I'm gonna step away for just a minute, get a different drink. Get a small snack. Just to kind of clear the head a bit. Appreciate you folks watching if you have been. It was really fun to do all these games. I mean, I have fun doing all these series playthroughs. It's cool to talk about them and see these history of these devs like working through these and changing things and trying things. It's almost like a little story, right? Like, oh, it's the Dude Bro era. They're gonna try like multiplayer with like quips and gritty bullshit and like laughable characters, and multiplayer and all that, and they're like, oh, it's like the we just need to keep the lights on eras, or it's like, you know, oh, here's the where they're trying to just figure out what they want to do in the first game and how they want to evolve it in the fours, and it's kind of like, it's kind of cool doing these kinds of things. I always have fun with it. It's not a series, like I said, that we're gonna get a whole lot of discussion on, so it's kind of more just for me to blab about. Yeah. Anyways, I don't know where I was going with that either. I'll be right back. Take a quick break. I think I need my take. Back in just a couple minutes, and then we'll do verdict day and 6. Right here. Need to see. I think after the tier list, I'll turn the stream off again and then put something in the mail before we start the next game. I plan on still starting that today. Why not finish? Alright. Anywho. Didn't get a snack. I think in the future what I want to do for these kinds of series playthroughs, if I think it's going to be one where it's a little harder to do off the cuff because of incremental changes or nuanced differences, I need to start writing more after each game, just kind of guidelines or like bullet points on like big key things on how I feel when I'm comparing them. I could just watch the end of the VODs too. I mean, I usually get a much better explanation right after finishing, but just for the sake of comparison, right? Some special mode. Not that I think it's been like fucked this time or anything. I mean, I'm just having fun with it. That's why I do it. I don't really care. I think it's cool doing these kinds of things, talking about them. Yeah, there's some where it's like, when I'm in these like inner brackets, I'm like, what would I do comparing like these with each other? And it's like, that's a level of like nuance where it's like, you really have to everything down to a science, and it's like, too many of these run together. I mean, the thing with Armored Core, like I said, is, I mean, a lot of them are literally the same thing with more missions, right? Like, what are you gonna do, right? At that point, you're just comparing mission design, which is fair. But anyways, verdict day. I liked it. I didn't love it. I think it has some of the similar problems with 5, where the ammo, the weapon type thing, the builds, all that's kind of whatever. But maybe it's because I just felt imprisoned and tortured by 5. But Verdict Day is such an improvement. I'm trying to decide where I want to put it. So with Verdict Day, the clarity of the visuals is so much better. The just visuals in general are better. It feels like probably the most at war, a big like non-stop war. More than any of them, I would say. Yeah, of any title, that the aesthetic, just you're constantly looking up. There's constantly bombers flying by and explosions in every area, and every zone you're in is some super war torn, like just husk, you know. But it's clear, like it's dark sometimes, but it's also light or evening, or you know, with lots of you know, it's never like the sun's shining and we're having a good day, but it's like, you know, everything has this like bleak grit to it, and it just like it just looks good. It looks good. Much better compared to 5, where it's trying to go for this like weird gritty like city atmosphere, but it just doesn't work. Like they went way overboard on the contrast and the filters. Verdict Day cleans up the visuals so I can see what I'm fighting much more easy, make decisions. Still has like environmental things you need to think about and cover and all that kind of shit, but a lot more open areas and stuff mixed in there where you can use that to your advantage or just see what's coming and stuff. So visually it looks like an actual war is going on, which is cool. I like that about it. Gameplay wise, it really doesn't feel all that much different. It's just where you use them, the fights you're using them against. Man, I'd probably put a verdict there. Maybe the low one. I don't know. I don't know where I'd compare those. They're like, I really think this tier list out of almost any of mine, the comparisons in here are not really gonna, not a big deal. Do I think 3 is the best like old gen game? Yeah. But, like, you know, these. Yeah. I'm just going off of how I felt when I was done. Like Armored Core 2's probably got a better building and stuff, but I kind of just came away from Verdict Day just feeling better, man. Like I said, Armored Core 2 is like maybe like objectively better on paper, but like I just had more fun with Verdict Day. Some of the fights, some of the goofy characters and shit, the visuals, the actual war-torn feel of it. With the tunes, like, yeah, it's not a great build one, but so it's 4 answers not good at builds either. For my, you know, for just for a campaign run through at least. I was like, I don't really care on that front. Like, it felt a little cleaner to play. It's not really that different, and I just used the fucking autocannon mech again from the last one, but Less gimmicky, crappy missions, more AC fights that were kind of fun. I mean, was it really easy for me? Maybe that was part of it. I didn't have to struggle get with some dog shit, but like the last mission against the White Glint Extremo, the next was cool. Like, it just kind of takes. I mean, I can't speak for the multiplayer, but it has short. It takes most of the problems of 5 and just gets rid of them, right? Cast that doesn't suck. Story that's much more clear. Not great, but more clear. Everything looks better. Everything's readable. Gameplay's not too different, but I mean, it's a little better, I guess. But it's mostly the playground you're in. The structure's better. No checkpoints, really, hardly. It's just short missions with unique things going on in them, or different set pieces, and then a bunch of submissions you do, which are a bit more basic. Those are kind of whatever. In a way, the submissions make me almost want to put it. We'll just let it sit. We'll let it. I don't know. Those are all about the same. Maybe 4 is probably at the bottom of that pile. I came away not caring about that one as much. But God, even just this fucking script, Jesus, the dialogue is way better, and that's not even a strong point of the series, really. But yeah. What else on Verdict Day, man? And like I said, I can't speak for the multiplayer. I mean, the structure, like I said, I like the shorter missions with more varied areas. I think that's a really important thing that the series has always done that 5 did not do. Even in the first game, you're going to a lot of different areas. I mean, they might not always be the highest fidelity looking games, but they always make an attempt to have variety there, which is nice. So something I liked in the old ones. And Verdict Day kind of brings that back. Otherwise, it's not that dissimilar in gameplay, like I said, of 5, but it worked better there than Verdict Day. Yeah, the submissions are kind of whatever. So, I mean, if you're just looking to go through the story, you don't really know what missions you need to do. Just that there are like 9 or 10 major missions, and the rest are like little sub ones. But the little sub ones just kind of feel like, you know, like just a normal Armored Core mission. They're not too crazy, not too good. Some of them have some story shit, some of them don't. It's not the most interesting, like, setup and momentum or anything. Like I said, it's better story than 5, but it's not really that good on that front still. It's just not atrocious, and I kind of like Batman. Like, there's not many characters I could say I like in these series. Not because they're like evil, just because there's not really many characters. So that was kind of a big difference there, but that was really about it. Yeah. Other than that, I mean, it was I had fun with it when I was done with it. Wasn't crazy good, but big leap from 5. I don't know. I almost want to put it there. I really didn't hate playing it. I mean, I had fun with it. I just I think it's because 5 was so bad, though. No, I think it's fun. I think I've got some fucking Stockholm going on, man. There's not much else to say on it. Short missions, better visuals, less annoying story, character that's cool. Gameplay works better, but it's not really that different. I mean, that's pretty much Verdict Day. Okay, and the moment you've been waiting for, the only actually great game in the series. Whoa! This is the only one I think is actually like really good. I think overall most of them are not like that great. They're not bad. I had fun with them. I don't think it was like atrocious. The bottom ones are bad, but like 6 just fucking absolutely blew them all out of the water, in my opinion, man. Just the build variety, the freedom I could have to build all sorts of shit, the stages that actually, like, I had like 6 mechs or more, and like I could pick one that like worked better for each stage, or it would just be more fun. And, like, I never could do that. Any of the other ones, hardly. Not without a fucking monumental amount of effort. Or some fucking jank, or just not as smoothly as it happened in this. And it's like I didn't have to either. I just wanted to build more. Just the polish, it's crazy. Constant set pieces, really fucking insanely smooth fucking gameplay. Down to the animation work, just every little thing, just the way the mechs move when you're springing off or jumping. I mean, when they're reloading, their little details and animate, it's just super polished. Feels great. Longest one is the most content. Awesome new game plus and plus plus system where you're getting new endings, new fights. Builds still matter a lot. They feel different. Everything's fast, but it's not so fast like for Answer and 4 where it's like it's just the samey, right? Like I can make something that feels quicker, that has a real difference in speed, but I could also make something a little slower, or at least just that plays differently, like hover, the quad hovers, or the tank, which is still really fast, but just has a different kind of play style, but it's still fast. Like it's kind of what I was talking about for Anthem. I was like, it's too fast to a certain extent, where like that nuance, that depth of like play styles and movement and what you can really do in level design because of that, it just is not an issue. Like you can have all sorts of different level design. You're having big crazy fights, you're having AC fights, you're having jumping around in cities and fighting big bosses, like giant bosses and stuff. It's just a great pace that just has taken all of the next level they've gone with after, you know, the Soul stuff started, and really taken that and shown they can still do like really good shit that isn't just Souls, and that they are like top class. Where I just I guess this isn't about FromSoft exactly, but yeah, I really like it. I mean, even just the tone, the music, and the atmosphere, the super, and like just that they even have like in a big AAA game like this, because these other ones aren't really AAA. That's something to think about. Have this just aesthetic they want to go for, this feel, this hyper industrial, super massive structure thing with this like almost like sinister, like it's kind of got like a Blade Runner 2149 kind of vibe going with the music at times, but also it's still like energetic and bumping, and like that they have this just like really solid feel like you do in a lot of the Souls games, like a very strong atmosphere, very clear vision of and feel, and like that they nail that while still making a super fucking very, there's so many weapons and parts, and instead of just incremental changes, a lot of them actually play like pretty different. That all of that's in there, and they have like the level of animation polish and detail, and that it runs good and just all that stuff. Like it's what you want in like an actual AAA game. It's got all the features, all you fully customizable, saving blueprints, saving decals, sharing them online, and like some of the old ones had that stuff too. But just really clean. Freedom, they've got the money. The money's good. You got the freedom to just buy all sorts of shit and try different stuff out. Still have hidden stuff. Still have, I feel like, a really cool story that is a little bit more piecemeal. It's not quite Souls where it's like everything's in like an item description, but you only know what your guy knows, really. So you will, I mean, you know a few more things than that technically, but you know, a lot of stuff they're not going to tell you. You know, what is the system, stuff like that. You're going to have to go read around, and you get stuff, and it really keeps you kind of engaged in the atmosphere, because that mystery and because of you wanting to like learn more is kind of always there, and I feel like that kind of fits the vibe of the game. Um, where you are discovering all this stuff, and it keeps you engaged in the extra New Game Plus runs because they're adding in new missions exclusive to New Game Plus and Plus Plus, new endings, and new dialogue changes with old fights, or some fights will change, and they're just changing all these little things, and you're looking forward to the fights because it's just a fun, really fun game. It looks really good and sounds really good, but you're also enjoying that, hey, I'm going to find out maybe something different here. I'm going to get a little bit more of a rounded experience on the story and shit. And I don't know everything that happened in it. It's not like a godly story, but it's just like a structure that works with the video game format, with the New Game Pluses, with the mission choices, with optional discoveries, with reading in the menu logs, you know, just like a kind of story that is more unique to video games, how that's told. And I feel like they lean into that. And I mean, Souls has always kind of done that. I mean, it kind of works here. I mean, it's obvious. It's got almost constant talking. It's not like it's a quiet game like those or something. So I don't want to over compare them, because at the end of the day, if you do expect Souls, you're going to be in trouble on 6. I think it still does really cool things with build, but it's the thing is, it's just good, man. I think if you don't, I think the balance is something with 6 that's a little funky. I like it, but if you're the kind of person who just builds one mech and calls it a day, kind of like the old ones where that's kind of all you could do, you might miss it a little bit. If you make like a god mech and just you're done, it's still really fun to move around. It still feels great as like an action game. Just the movement and the sound of stuff and the places and things you're gonna fight, and how frequently that's gonna happen. But trying different things, building different stuff, making mechs that, you know, I made a mech that was just guerrilla tactics, just jumping with missiles, and I could do that. I made one that was like swords and shotguns, and I could do that, and it was fun. And I made one that was like a, you know, death from above, explosive, hover type. Like I could do that. And it's like, if you're just like, I'm just gonna make the tank with the shit stomper, Gatling guns, and the songbirds or something, like, you can do that, and it's fun. I had one. I liked it. I used it a fair bit. But I used it whenever I thought I needed to soak damage and deal a lot of damage, not every mission. And if you're not the type to try those things, the game won't make you. And I think that's a big strength of the game, is that build variety and stuff. The stagger system, I think, feels good. Can it be a little too much of a focus, maybe? Probably, maybe. It kind of depends. I liked it. It felt the most fleshed out and the most rewarding. Where I can make clear builds and like build ideas and stuff using like direct impact and all that to think about multipliers and shit. Stunned enemies. Is sustained fire and all that really is viable? It's like, probably, but I mean, maybe that's a little thing that some people might have a problem with. I think it feels pretty good, but I could see people maybe have a little issue with that. Maybe it's something that people just got to figure out as we go. Maybe it's just too easy to want to do this stun break because it's just right there. It's really obvious. But I don't really find it a problem. I thought it was really fun. And I made a bunch of different kinds of mechs that utilized that. I made a super fast mech that was dual handguns, big long handguns that was dodging in and out like crazy, and then I take, you know, I'd stun them, and then I'd shoot them with these big cannons, and then I had stuff that was just about sustained fire, and then I had stuff that was about, you know, breaking with miniguns, and then going with big hits, and it's like there was plenty of options there. It's still more than I could have it on tap at any time than I feel like any of the other games. And I could load those up mid-mission, I could load them in the briefing, I could change them in the briefing, I could go to the training room, I could add AI, I could change parts while I was fighting the AI, that I could replay all the missions, that there was all the hidden stuff. I mean, it has the amount of extra features and polish that you I feel like every AAA game should have. They don't. And then just on top of that, I mean, just takes a fucking dump, I think, on the rest of the series. It just is so much more fully featured and just feels so good to move in, and has such crazy larger than life missions and so many missions and much variety and build potential and build allowance. Like I can actually like buy them and like do stuff, and I can use cover, and I can, I'm not, the AI is not like completely horrible. Like it's got its things. It's got its things I think that are worth discussing that maybe aren't awesome. But overall, I thought it was a great game. And I was always engaged, like I said, by the story and especially the aesthetics and the sound. I think they bring back the same sound guy for some of the music, and it's good, man. It's got these like long, like this, like wailing, like synths in the back, kind of. Like I said, it kind of reminds me of like the new Blade Runner a little bit. Not that I'm saying they like pulled that from it. I'm just saying they kind of remind me of that, like these big, like dirty, like long, kind of like echoey or wailing synths, right? Where it feels very like like sinister or like oppressive or whatever. And like that's the vibe. It's like it's corporations fighting. It's much more of an emotional story thing they're going for with like actual characters who have motivations and hidden backstories and goals, and all of that weaves into your shit, and it's cool. Not necessary to have that, but I think they make it work. And just all that meshed with the visuals, like that feeling that the way they talk and the kind of story they're delivering to meshes well enough with the music and the visuals. It's like you don't always have that combination of all of the different elements of a game like that always running at full cylinder. And I feel like that's some of what you'll have a game that's really good in one way, but like those games that like have like all of the pieces coming together and then running on all cylinders, it tends to be a little bit more rare. So I think for the most part it worked out there. There's some weird shit, like some of the voice acting is like a little goofy. If you play a lot of games, they're all like voice actors who get a lot of work. So you're like, oh, I'm hearing DC Douglas. I love DC Douglas. He's fun. But like I'm hearing DC Douglas, right? In this game that's like more like somber, like emotional. It's like he's hamming it up too. He's chewing the scenery and it's fun. So in a way it's kinda got this like what I imagine is Ace Combat-y, but like Star Fox kind of thing going on with some of the dialogue where it's just like this really over the top goofy shit. But then sometimes it's more like, like with the chick in your head or whatever, she's just constantly like, not having a good time kind of vibe, or she's got some hidden meaning behind shit, and or Walter's just constantly gruff. So they're kind of all it's like a pretty colorful cast in a way, not in the sense that most people would say where it's like they're all fun, right? There's just like some variance there, but sometimes you could say maybe if there's anything at odds with the tone, like sometimes some of the characters, but like it's usually not a big deal, and it's usually just the Balaam, and they're consistent because they're just like jarheads, but they're fun. Like on replays and shit, you're like, oh, here we go, man, DC Douglas, I fucking rip some dude's head off. So and then like I said, I mean, it's kind of like when you're watching a movie and it's like, oh, it's George Clooney or something, right? It's hard to really like take it serious if it's like a more like like a certain role or something like Brad Pitt or something. I mean, even then, those can be good, right? And in this sense, I feel like they're fine too. But it's like one of those reasons why like a director wouldn't pick an A-lister for like their thing because they're too recognizable. In this, I'm not saying these are like A-list actors or anything, but like sometimes you're like, yeah, I can hear the blade is unbending guy, and it's like kind of takes you out of it. It's a minor gripe. I don't think it's a big deal. I think the balance stuff is a bit more real discussion you can have with it. But overall, yeah, I'm getting into just talking about the game again. It's just really good. That I played it 3 times in a row, and like I would do another. It was just like fun the whole way, and I wanted to find all the parts. I wanted to unlock all the parts. I did all the arena because you have to. But like, was it the hardest? I mean, maybe that one fight was the hardest thing in Armored Core for me. But we were only on him for an hour. I guess I've spent more time in other Armored Cores, but it was the most mechanically intensive fight. The big one that filters everybody. But you make a new build and then you handle them just fine. So like build craft still matters a lot in this. I think people can go into it expecting maybe it to be just pure action or like pure iframe kind of soul stuff, but it's like builds still matter a lot. So like they haven't like forgotten build. I feel like I built way more than I did in the last. I built more than I ever did. I've built more in this, and I every replay I was swapping between like 6 different mechs. Yes, one of them or two of them just were better and would just kick more ass than the others, but like the others were viable in the right situation and fun, and they'd all be technically viable, and I had fun with them in different ways. And on top of that, just the whole audio-visual experience is just really tight. Yeah, the biggest thing, and I think something, maybe, it depends how much stuff you play and how much you care to pay attention to details, but is the details just super polished. Like, man, they're seeing some of this animation, or like these guys are like, they don't need to do some of these animations, or they don't need to put some of these details into the world, or these little bits and pieces, but like they do. And I feel like those things add up to make a lot of. That's where people say soul, right? Where it makes like a big difference. It's not just like, oh, we gotta get out the next piece of corporate slop or something, right? Or we gotta save some money here and there. Like, it doesn't have that feeling. It doesn't feel like I'm gonna get like a battle pass or get nickel and dimed at some point or anything like that. You can feel some passion, some like artistic vision, you know? Like, you don't really get that in like an Assassin's Creed or something, right? Like maybe the art, like in the fidelity or something, but like just that feeling of like that strong creative work, right? I'm not saying like Assassin's Creed dog shit, but I'm talking about the new ones. But I always use that as a damn example. New Assassin's Creed shit. I haven't played one since Odyssey or Origin. But yeah, just your more generic shit. So I don't know. I'm sitting here talking about Armored Core 6 again. That should tell you. I'm supposed to be comparing to the other ones. That should tell you how much I like it. Like I said, I like the series. I had fun with it. I don't think any of them were like great until 6. I think they were just like during the series playthrough, I called the series like half-assed a few times. A lot of these games feel like half upgrades, or ones where they were trying to play it too safe, or they just need to keep the lights on, like Another Age or something. And I'm sure when they made them, it's not the case exactly. Maybe a little bit, but like I'm sure they put some thought into some of it. And of course, there's some passion in there somewhere, but I think you get moments like For Answer and like 3 and obviously the originals and stuff, and then some of the ones that clean shit up like Verdict Day that kind of add some of that spice back in, that feel like they're kind of reaching for that deal. But I don't think any of them ever have everything come together just in an insanely tight way, with very few faults, with just a very clear, well executed vision. All barely any of them, man. Even For Answer gets a little fucking old by the end, man. It gets a little samey. Like, still good. I would call that a good game. Hell, I'd even call probably most of the stuff in this tier probably at least decent to good. But none of them are like great. I think as a series, it's cool. I think it's good. I like the series because it's very unique. They go for this mech building thing. With variable types of movement and stuff, and that's just not really a lot of that. And I think for the most part, the builds and that kind of customization and that kind of dystopian post-apocalyptic feel are just tight. They've got a very unique identity to them, and I think all of that makes the series worth playing and overall good. But at an individual level, each game, like especially in comparison to each other, just I don't think hardly any of them really rise up to like a super beefy level. And it's not just budget, it's not just fidelity. There's indie games that look way worse and have way less budget that I'd put up high too. Like it is just the full scope of it, right? You know, and the first gen stuff, like some of it's the controls, some of it's bad mission design, right? You know, some of the threes and stuff, you know, we're playing with too much of the same stuff from before. It's maybe not an evolution. It's still got weird controls, right? You know, your verdict days are going for multiplayer. It's not quite working out, right? Like the builds are not that interesting, but the gameplay hasn't really made up for it, right? And it's not like, you know, even though they're trying to go bigger set piece and stuff, it's not really like there's that many crazy missions where it just feels that good, you know? I mean, it's like, you know, a lot of these, it's like, they're still good, but like, there's always like some bullshit, right? There's something, you know, holding them back. And some of that's the charm. Like I said, I don't regret doing this series playthrough. I quite enjoyed doing it, I would say. More than I thought I would. But I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I don't think it's like a godly series or anything. And I think 6 blows most of it out of the water, man, by quite a bit. I mean, it really is. I'm not even just trying to be a contrarian or just be like some hipster or some shit. Like, there really is a power gap for me. Like, I really liked 6. I loved how it felt as an action game enthusiast. I loved how it felt. I don't think I ever had that feel with the fast stuff and the other ones. And the deliberate movement of the old ones I really like. I really like deliberate slow movement. Stuff like old Resident Evils and all that shit. I think that kind of stuff is almost a fucking lost art at this point. Really like that stuff, but there's just too much. There's just too many little things, man. Where it's like, oh, this is really cool. It's really neat. I like this. I like how it's unique. As someone who's played just an assload of shit. Not as like an awesome point. You know, just that's just how it is. I just played enough stuff where it's like something different sometimes is more important than something just really good. So they had that kind of like different feel, which I really appreciated, and that speed and stuff that you don't get anymore. But there's just too much. There's every one of them, even the originals, man. You know, they got some dog shit. Well, of course the originals for sure. Always battling it with something that was just like, yeah, this probably isn't a good thing, but it rises above it to create a solid game, if not great. Yeah, that's kind of right. If you want to hear more about Armored Core 6, I mean, I went fucking ape shit talking about it at the end of the Armored Core 6 playthrough like a few hours ago. You can watch that. I should probably. I mean, probably. Oh yeah, apologize for anything. I considered it. But I think I'm gonna do Under the Waves next. And then I'll switch to my PC setup, my mouse and keyboard setup, and then Golden Idol. I need that Golden Idol, dude. I need my fix, dude. Yeah, give me my Golden Idol. I'm hyped. I bought it. I'm ready. But I'm gonna do Under the Waves first. I don't have to switch my setup again, and then I'll play mouse and keyboard Golden Idol. So maybe tomorrow. And then do Metal Hellsinger, then Starfield. Did you play it already? I'm so surprised that they made another one, and it's so soon. I'm down. I love that game, but we'll see, dude. Fucking hell, I'm surprised. I wonder what they're gonna do next. I didn't even think they'd cover this part. I mean, there was more story they could dig into, so I guess that's the idea. I wonder what game they're gonna make next. Maybe they'll make like a new Golden Idol type of thing. Maybe they'll just let it sit. We'll see. Well, anyways, yeah. So the general thoughts on the series. I think overall, like I said, solid. I think with some really high points with Armored Core 6, or if you got to play any of them, just play Armored Core 6 at least. It's in a league of its own. Some really low points where if I recommended you play through this series, I would say skip. I would say as a we'll bring that up after the general thoughts. I'll give you like a guideline of games I think you need to play in the series. If you're gonna do like a series playthrough, but you're not like want to go that hard, like I went, like you don't want to do like an exhaustive series playthrough. You just want to like get the series, get a feel for the progression, and kind of hit the high notes, and then call it a day. I mentioned that a bit. I mean, it should be pretty obvious which ones you got. But yeah, I would say overall solid series. I had fun doing the playthrough. I think they're very unique still to this day. If you like mecha, it's probably your best mecha bet for customization. It's not as transformative as some series. There's not as many like kind of spin-offs or crazy shit like when we did the Kirby one or something as far as full series playthroughs go. But it's cool kind of seeing the little incremental changes or lack thereof. I think they're worth giving a go. I would definitely not recommend doing all of them. But for your general gamer, definitely a 6 for sure. Overall, yeah, solid series. I think I'm at solid. Probably not good. I don't think I'd go more than solid. I think it's a clean series. I had a good time with it. Yeah, there's just enough jank, enough execution issues, enough low points where it's really hard to be like, yeah, this is a very consistent, top shelf, always, good, or always at least, have some kind of, visionary like idea for every game or something. It definitely feels like it's keeping the lights on sometimes back then, right? But yeah, games I would recommend playing if you're just gonna go through, like, you just kind of want to try Armored Core, but you want to try like the whole kind of shebang, like which ones would you want to skip and all that. I definitely say play the first one. If you like that, by all means do Project Phantasma and Master Arena. I think you're gonna have a little tough time getting into the first Armored Core, but if you can stick with it and enjoy that deliberate movement and kind of planning out your mech and enjoying the kind of like almost role playing of being like this badass like mech pilot, then you'll like Project Phantasma and Master Arena. It's just more of the same. Probably get Human Plus. I didn't. I don't think it made a huge difference for me, but it probably would make a big difference in general. I think Armored Core 2, go for it. If you really were kind of iffy after the first 3 Armored Core games, the first like 1, 2, sorry, this is 1. This is Project Phantasma. This is Master. You're iffy on the first ones, and you went through them, or you bounced off of the first game, skip 2. It's really not all that amazing. It's good as far as an Armored Core game is. It's fine, but it's gonna be very similar. Absolutely skip Another Age, regardless. I would say just skip that anyways, unless you just really fucking like just for head over heels for Armored Core 2. Skip it. And if at that point, if you're head over heels for Another Age, you might as well just fucking play them all. So after that, 3, definitely play. If you're gonna play any of the old gen games, so that's 1 through Last Raven, pretty much most of this fucking list. At least play 3. And And if you like 3, Silent Line's just more 3. So, definitely would recommend those. Even if you bounced off the first ones and 2, this isn't going to be that different, but it's as refined as it gets, so I just say give it a go. Well, not as refined as it gets. That's probably Last Raven, but give it a go. Then you're moving on to Nexus. Skip Nexus, I would say. Just play Last Raven. I mean, this is your first foray into twin stick. If you like Armored Core 3 and Silent Line, and you've liked every game before this, Nexus is fine. Go for it. But if you were like, I don't know, I had fun with some of these, I maybe bounced off of 2, or I skipped 2, or like 3 was fine, like, just skip Nexus. It's worse than a lot of these. You gotta be into it. Skip Ninebreaker regardless. I mean, if you're gonna do Ninebreaker, you gotta be really fucking into it. The build craft. You're gonna need to get all the parts and Nexus and shit. Like I said, if you're going all in on Another Age or Ninebreaker, at that point, just play fuck all. I don't care at that point. Like, I mean, I guess 5 you'd still want to skip, but yeah, I would only do Ninebreaker if you are absolute maniac mode. Really just love the builds in the old gen. And you're willing to grind up stuff to get the part to do that. You don't care about anything else, the structure, the mission design, the funds, the anything, just raw builds. Then go for Ninebreaker. But yeah, obviously if you skipped Nexus, skip Ninebreaker. Last Raven, I say give Last Raven a shot, no matter who you are. Maybe if you're afraid of like the difficulty, there's probably some route guides out there with like ratings on difficulty. Maybe hit the ones that are easy first, but or just do a route that's simple. I don't know how many there even are. There's like 5 or 6 or something. Not 100% sure. Definitely give Last Raven a go. Just the aesthetics alone, the twin stick controls, which might be why maybe you're scared of the old ones. That one has that. You have twin stick controls. Nexus does too, but the Last Raven has a more complete, tight package. I definitely recommend that. Regardless, no matter which of these you drop, unless if you just absolutely, you couldn't like 3, you couldn't like the first ones, like, I would still say give Last Raven a try, but it is still an old gen game. So, and if you really bounced hard, then skip it, but give it a go otherwise. Then you're moving into 4. 4's so short, you could give it a go, but honestly, unless you're like me and you just want to see the progression, I would say skip 4 and just go for 4 answer. It's just the better game, same idea, speed. 4 just has some crappy levels. It has some crappy enemy design. The gameplay is smooth, but it doesn't really make great use of it, and it's not as smooth as for answer. So I think no matter who you are, I don't care if you liked the old ones, didn't like the old ones, play for answer, give it a go. This is one of the best. It's just a great action game. You don't have to be obsessed with builds. I barely changed the build in this game. It was one of the problems with it, I'd say, but on one hand, it was just a fun action game. So just play it. You could just pick a solid starter mech. You get a choice of like 4 or 5. Just roll. Just a lot of fun. Routes, well paced. Good feel, good music and aesthetics and shit. Then you got 5, skip 5 for sure. You can manage to play Verdict Day if you can get a hold of it. I'd say give it a go. It's gonna feel different than the old gen. It's gonna feel different than the speed ones. It's gonna be somewhere in the middle on speed. But it's got a pretty cool aesthetic and build set there. I don't think it's a must play, but it's different enough from the others that depending on if you bounced or not off of most of them, it's still worth giving a go. You might like it. The problem is the multiplayer's dead. Well, no, Verdict Day's multiplayer's alive on 360. I mean, it's probably not alive. There's probably nobody playing it, but so yeah. And then 6, just play it. Yeah, I don't care. Oh wait, I forgot about Formula Front. I would say skip Formula Front. Unless the idea of meticulously programming an AI to fight for you in a series that, in a system that was never made for in the first place, excites you, just skip it. But yeah, 6, just play 6 for sure. I think if you have to play any of them, play 6. I don't care if you like mecha builds. Well, you're gonna have to like build a little bit because you need to build a little, but you just like action, just the aesthetics. I think there's something in there for anyone. I think you could bounce off it if you just really hate the idea of mech building. You're gonna have to build more than like you do in 4 Answer or something. And you don't have to. I mean, we got somebody in here who fucking didn't build like at all in the first playthrough, but you're gonna have a tougher time. So. But it's just the all-around video game experience. And that's my recommendation list if you want to try Armored Core, which you can also use as a little bit of a shorthand for, I guess, thoughts on the series. You don't want to watch a fucking 4-hour pretentious bastard babbling on. I don't know, I just have fun with it, man. I just like talking about games, man. Bite me, man. Give me shit. Yeah, thanks for watching. If anybody is watching almost all these too, wow, dude, thanks a lot. I don't think there's probably a whole lot of interest in this series, like I said, in the West in general, and probably just in general. So, it's a cool piece of little FromSoft history. None of them are quite Echo Knight levels of quality. As far as old FromSoft games. Well, no, some of these are better than Echo Knight. I'm just kidding. Echo Knight's like worse than almost all of these. Probably. It's probably better than Armored Core 5. It's probably like Nexus tier Echo Knight is. It's interesting to look at. That is a game that has some fucking jank, dude. Holy hell. That's another FromSoft game. It's like a horror kind of surreal ghost on a boat thing. It's not really horror that much. The Echo Knight too. Very something. Anyway. Yep, thanks for watching. So next will be Under the Waves. That'll be here in a few, although my voice is kind of going a bit, so maybe I'll wait till tomorrow. Then we'll run through that whole thing. Might go get something to drink or eat. My brother likes already eaten. We will see. Peace for now. I don't know what the next series playthrough is going to be. We did some this year already, and obviously I had a lot of those like ones like Dragon Quest that were work in progress over a couple of years. In terms of like non-stop series playthroughs, Mega Man X might be coming up at some point. We'll have to see. That'll probably only take like a week.